The Lord hath smitten him by the hand of a woman. Book of Judith 16:7. I was in delightful company. The lady who sat facing me across the massive Renaissance fireplace was none other than Venus. She was no demi-mondaine who had taken a pseudonym to wage war upon the masculine sex, but the goddess of love in person. She had lit a crackling fire and was settled in a comfortable armchair. The firelight flickered over her pale face, her white eyes, and from time to time her feet when she sought to warm them. Her head was magnificent in spite of the stony, lifeless eyes, but this was the only part of her that I was able to see, for the sublime creature had wrapped her marble body in a great fur beneath which she was huddled like a shivering cat. "I do not understand, madame," I ventured. "It is no longer cold. In fact, the past 2 weeks have been delightfully spring-like. It must be your nerves." "You may keep your spring," she replied in a toneless voice, and then sneezed divinely twice over. "I cannot stand it here, and I'm beginning to see why." "What, my dear?" "I am beginning to believe the incredible and understand the incomprehensible, namely the philosophy of the German people and the qualities of their womenfolk. It no longer surprises me in the least that you Northerners are unable to love, for you have not an inkling what love is about." "I beg your pardon, madame," I replied, my blood rising. "I have really given you no reason to speak in this way." "No, it is true, you have not." The divine one sneezed for a third time and shrugged her shoulders with inimitable grace. "That is why I have always been kind to you, and have even paid you a visit now and then, although I invariably catch cold in spite of my furs. Do you remember the first time we met?" "How could I forget it?" I said. "You had thick brown curls then, brown eyes and rosy lips, but I recognized you at once by the outline of your face and its marble pallor. You always wore a jacket trimmed with squirrel." "Yes, you were truly in love with that jacket. And what an attentive suitor." "You taught me the meaning of love. Worshipping you made me forget 2,000 years of history." "How incomparably faithful I was." "Oh, as for faithfulness, you ungrateful man." "I do not wish to reproach you. You are undoubtedly a divine woman, but above all you are a woman and, like every member of your sex, cruel in matters of love." "What you call cruelty," the goddess of love retorted, "is the very substance of sensual and natural love. It is woman's true nature to give herself wherever she loves and to love whatever pleases her." "But can there be greater cruelty for a lover than a beloved's infidelity?" "Alas," she replied, "woman is faithful as long as she loves, but you demand that she be faithful without love and give herself without enjoyment. Who is cruel then, woman or man? You Northerners take love too seriously. You speak of duty where it is purely a question of pleasure." "Yes, madame, as far as love is concerned, our feelings are honorable and virtuous, and our relations are durable." "And yet," interrupted the lady, "you nurse a secret craving for a life of sheer paganism. You modern men, you children of reason, cannot begin to appreciate love as pure bliss and divine serenity. Indeed, this kind of love is disastrous for men like you, for as soon as you try to be natural, you become vulgar. To you, nature is an enemy. You have made devils of the smiling gods of Greece, and you have turned me into a creature of evil. You may cast anathemas on me, curse me, or offer yourself in sacrifice like frenzied Bacchantes at my altar, but if one of you so much as dares to kiss my crimson lips, he must make a barefoot pilgrimage to Rome in sackcloth and ashes, and pray until the cursed staff grows green again, while all around me roses, violets, and myrtle bloom everlastingly. Their fragrance is not for you. Stay in your northern mists and Christian incense, and leave our pagan world to rest under the lava and the rubble. Do not dig us up. Pompeii was not built for you, nor were our villas, our baths, and our temples. You do not need the gods. They would freeze to death in your climate." The lovely marble creature coughed and rearranged the sable around her shoulders. "Thank you for the lesson in classics," I replied, "but I cannot deny that in your peaceful and sunny world, just as in our misty climate, man and woman are natural enemies. Love may unite them briefly to form one mind, one heart, one will, but all too soon they are torn asunder. And this you know better than I. Either one of them must bend the other to his will, or else he must let himself be trampled underfoot." "Under the woman's foot, of course," said Lady Venus impertinently, "and that you know better than I." Of course, that is why I have no illusions. In other words, you are now my slave without illusions, and I shall trample you mercilessly. Madame, you do not know me yet. I admit that I am cruel, since the word gives you so much delight. But am I not entitled to be so? It is man who desires, woman who is desired. This is woman's only advantage, but it is a decisive one. By making man so vulnerable to passion, nature has placed him at woman's mercy, and she who has not the sense to treat him like a humble subject, a slave, a plaything, and finally to betray him with a laugh, well, she is a woman of little wisdom. My dear, your principles, I protested, are founded on the experience of 1,000 years, she replied mischievously, running her white fingers through the dark fur. The more submissive woman is, the more readily man recovers his self-possession and becomes domineering. But the more cruel and faithless she is, the more she ill-treats him, the more wantonly she toys with him, and the harsher she is, the more she quickens his desire and secures his love and admiration. It has always been so, from the time of Helen and Delilah all the way to Catherine the Great and Lola Montez. I cannot deny it, I said. Nothing could be more attractive to man than the idea of a beautiful tyrant, both voluptuous and cruel, who insolently and inconsistently changes her favorite to suit her humor. And wears furs, said the goddess. What made you think of that? I know your tastes. Are you aware, I said, that you have become quite a coquette since we last met? What do you mean by that? I mean that I can think of nothing more extravagantly flattering to your white skin than these dark furs. The goddess laughed. You are dreaming, she cried. Wake up. She grasped my arm with her marble hand. Wake up, she repeated, this time in a low, gruff voice. I strained to open my eyes. I could see the hand that was shaking me, but suddenly it turned a tawny brown, and the voice became the husky alcoholic voice of my Cossack, who stood towering above me. Do get up, said the good fellow. This is disgraceful. What is disgraceful? To fall asleep with your clothes on and a book in your hand. He snuffed the candles which had burned right down and picked up the volume that had fallen from my hand. He looked at the title page. Aha, Heigl. Besides, it is time we left for Mr. Severin's. He is expecting us for tea. A very curious dream, said Severin, when I had finished my tale. He sat with his elbows on his knees, his chin resting in his delicately veined hands, lost in deep thought. As I expected, he remained for a long while without moving, almost without breathing. I found nothing remarkable in his behavior, for over the last 3 years we had become very good friends, and I was used to his eccentricities. He was undoubtedly an odd character, although he was not the dangerous madman that his neighbors and indeed the whole district of Cologne considered him to be. Not only did I find him interesting, but I had a great liking for him, and consequently I too was regarded by many people as a trifle mad. For a Galician gentleman and a landowner, especially considering his age, he was barely 30, he was surprisingly lucid and serious, almost to the point of pedantry. He followed a rigorous philosophical and practical system. Each minute of his life obeyed the dictates of the thermometer, the barometer, the aerometer, the hydrometer, Hippocrates, Hufeland, Plato, Nig, and Lord Chesterfield. Occasionally, however, he was subject to attacks of such violence that he seemed about to burst through the very walls. At such times people would wisely avoid him. While he sat there in silence, one could hear the faint singing of the fire, the humming of the venerable samovar, the creak of the old rocking chair on which I sat smoking my cigar, and the chirrup of the cricket in the wall. I let my gaze wander over the curious collection of objects, skeletons of animals, stuffed birds, globes, plaster casts. Suddenly my eyes alighted on a picture that I had often seen before, but which today, in the red glow of the fire, made a particularly strange impression on me. It was a large oil painting done in the powerful colors of the Flemish school, and its subject was quite unusual. A beautiful woman, naked beneath her dark furs, was resting on an ottoman, supported on her left arm. A playful smile hovered on her lips, and her thick hair was tied in a Grecian knot and dusted with snow-white powder. Her right hand played with a whip, while her bare foot rested nonchalantly on a man who lay on the ground before her like a slave, like a dog. The pronounced but well-shaped features of the man showed quite melancholy and helpless passion. He gazed up at her with the fanatical, burning eyes of a martyr. This man, this footstool for her feet, was Severin, beardless and 10 years younger by the look of him. "Venus in furs," I cried, pointing at the picture. "That is how I saw her in my dreams." "I too," said Severin, "but I was dreaming with my eyes open." "What do you mean?" "Oh, it is a ridiculous story." "It appears that my dream was prompted by your picture," I pursued. "Do tell me what is behind it, and how it came to play such an important part in your life. I cannot wait to hear." "Then look at the picture facing it," said my friend, without answering my question. It was a remarkably good copy of Titian's famous Venus with the Mirror, which hangs in the Dresden Art Gallery. "Yes, but what of it?" Severin rose and pointed to the furs in which Titian had draped his goddess. "She is also a Venus in furs," he said, smiling subtly. I do not think the venerable Venetian had any ulterior motive. He simply painted the portrait of some distinguished Messalina coldly inspecting her majestic charms, and he was tactful enough to paint a Cupid holding the mirror, with some reluctance, I may add. The picture is merely a piece of flattery. Later, some connoisseur of the Baroque dubbed the Lady Venus, and the Despot's furs in which Titian's model wrapped herself, more out of fear of catching cold than for modesty, became the symbol of the tyranny and cruelty that are common to beautiful women. But what does it matter? As it stands, the painting is a biting satire on modern love. Venus must hide herself in a vast fur, lest she catch cold in our abstract northern climate, in the icy realm of Christianity. Severin laughed and lit another cigarette. Just then the door opened, and a pretty, plump blonde with an amiable and intelligent air, wearing a black silk dress, trotted in with a tray of cold meat and eggs for our tea. Severin picked up an egg and opened it with his knife. "Did I not tell you that I wanted them soft-boiled?" he shouted, with a violence that made the young woman quake with fear. "But my dear Sucha," she began fearfully. "What do you mean, Schutza?" he shouted. "You are to obey. Do you hear?" Whereupon he tore down a note that was hanging beside his weapons. The pretty woman fled from the room like a frightened doe. "Let me catch you doing that again," he shouted after her. "But Severin," I said, placing my hand on his arm, "how can you treat a lovely little woman like that?" "Take a look at her," he said, with a sly wink. "If I had flattered her, she would have tied a noose around my neck, but because I train her with a knout, she worships me." "What nonsense!" "Nonsense yourself. That is the way to train women. You may live like a pasha in your harem if you choose, but do not foist your theories on me." "Why not?" he exclaimed. "Goethe's words, 'Be the anvil or be the hammer,' are never more true than when applied to the relations between man and woman. Incidentally, the Lady Venus informed you of this in your dream. Woman's power lies in the passion she can arouse in man, in which she will exploit to her own advantage, unless he remains always on his guard. Man has only one choice, to be a slave or to be a tyrant. If he surrenders to her, the yoke will begin to weigh on his neck, and soon he will feel the touch of the whip." "What odd maxims!" "Not maxims, but personal experience," he replied with a nod. "I have been thoroughly whipped myself, and it cured me. Would you like to read about it?" He rose and took from his massive desk a small manuscript which he laid in front of me. "You asked me what the picture was about, and I have long owed you an explanation. Here you are. Read this." Severin sat by the fire with his back toward me, lost in reverie. Everything became quiet. The fire singing in the hearth, the samovar, and the cricket were heard once more. I opened the manuscript and read, "Confessions of a Supersensualist." The margin of the manuscript bore, in the form of an epigraph, an adaptation of the famous lines from Faust. "Thou sensual, supersensual libertine, a little girl can lead thee by the nose." I turned the page and read, "Since I believe that it is impossible to describe the past objectively, I have compiled the following from the personal diary I kept during the period in question. Thus my story will have a flavor of the present. Gogol, the Russian Molière, once wrote, I cannot remember where, 'The true muse of comedy is a woman with tearful eyes under a smiling mask. Remarkable. A strange feeling comes over me as I write these words. The air seems laden with intoxicating smells that make my head spin and ache. The smoke of the fire rises in spirals that turn into figures. Gray-bearded gnomes point at me mockingly. Chubby cupids ride on the back of my chair and climb onto my knee. I smile in spite of myself. I even laugh aloud when I think of my adventures. And yet I am writing with no ordinary ink, but with the red blood that drips from my heart. The wounds that were healed long ago have opened up again and throb with pain. Now and then a tear falls onto the page. The days drift aimlessly by in the little Carpathian health resort. I see nobody, and nobody sees me. It is so dull here that one might take to writing idylls. There would be time enough to fill a gallery with paintings, or write enough plays for a whole season, enough trios and duets for a dozen virtuosi. But when it comes to the point, all that I manage to do is to stretch the canvas, smooth the bow, and line the music paper. For the truth is, no false modesty, Severin, you can deceive others, but alas, not yourself. I am nothing but a dilettante, an amateur in painting, poetry, and music, and in all the arts that are supposed to be unprofitable, but that can nevertheless earn one the income of a cabinet minister, or even of a minor potentate. The truth is that I am an amateur in life. Up to now, I have lived exactly as I have painted and written poetry. That is, I have never progressed far beyond the first brushstroke, the outline of the plot, the first stanza. Some people begin everything and finish nothing. I am one of those. But let us get to the point. I lie on my window seat, gazing at the setting of my despair, savoring its poetry. Before me, a breathtaking view of the blue mountains bathed in a mist of golden sunlight and veined with silver torrents. How clear the sky is, with its towering snowy domes. How green and fresh the wooded slopes and meadows where small herds are grazing, down to the tawny waves of corn where the reapers stoop and rise rhythmically. The house where I am staying is in a sort of park or forest or wilderness, whatever it may be, and very isolated. Its only other inhabitants are a widow from Lwów and the landlady, Madame Tartakowska, a little old woman who grows older and smaller each day, an aged dog with a lame leg, and a kitten that plays endlessly with a ball of yarn. The ball, I believe, belongs to the lovely widow. The widow is said to be very beautiful, still young, 24 at the most, and very rich too. She lives on the first floor. Her green shutters are always drawn, and her balcony is overgrown with green creepers. I occupy the ground floor, and the garden affords a pleasant leafy bower where I read, write, paint, and sing like a bird on the tree. I can see what is happening on the balcony, and sometimes I catch sight of a white gown gleaming through the thick tangle of foliage. And yet the beautiful woman up there does not really interest me, for I am enamored of another. My love is quite without hope, and I am far more miserable than the Knight of Toggenburg or the Chevalier in Manon Lescaut. My beloved is made of stone. In the garden, or rather the small neglected park, there is a charming meadow where a few does graze peacefully. In its center stands a statue of Venus, the original of which I believe is in Florence. This Venus is the most beautiful woman I have ever seen. Of course, this does not mean much, for I have seen few beautiful women, in fact, few women at all. In love, too, I am an amateur who never gets beyond the first brushstrokes, the first act of the play. But why talk in superlatives, as though beauty could ever be surpassed? It is enough to say that she is beautiful, and that I love her madly, passionately, with feverish intensity, as one can only love a woman who responds to one with a petrified smile, ever calm and unchanging. I adore her absolutely. Often, when the dappled sunlight shimmers beneath the trees, I lie in the shelter of a young birch, reading. Often at night I pay a visit to my cold, cruel beloved. Clasping her knees, I press my face against her cold pedestal and worship her. The rising moon, which just now is waxing, creates an indescribable effect. It swims between the trees and floods the meadow with a silvery sheen. The goddess, as if transfigured, seems to bathe in the soft glow. One evening, as I was returning from my place of worship along a wooded path, I suddenly caught sight of a figure through the screen of trees, a woman's form, white as stone and shining in the moonlight. It was as though my dream had come true. The lovely creature had come down from her pedestal to follow me. I was seized with a nameless fear, and my heart pounded as if it would burst. I am an amateur. There is no doubt about it. As usual, I stopped short after the first stanza, or rather I did not stop. I fled as fast as my feet could carry me. What a stroke of luck! A Jewish dealer in photographs has found me a replica of my ideal. It is a small reproduction entitled Venus with the Mirror. What a woman! I want to compose a poem, but instead I write on the back of the photograph. Venus in furs. You are cold, and yet you fire the hearts of man. Wrap yourself in your despot's furs, for they become no one so well as you, cruel goddess of beauty and love. A while later, I add a few verses from a poem by Goethe that I have found in the Paralipomena to Faust. To love, his wings belie his nature, and his arrows are but claws. Beneath his crown are budding horns, for without any doubt he is, like all the gods of ancient Greece, a devil in disguise. Then I set the picture before me, propped on a book, and contemplated. I am enchanted, but at the same time filled with horror by the cold coquetry of the splendid woman enveloping her charms in dark furs, and by the severity and harshness in her marble features. I take up the pen again and write the following lines. To love and to be loved, what joy! And yet how this splendor pales in comparison with the blissful torment of worshipping a woman who treats one as a plaything, of being the slave of a beautiful tyrant who mercilessly tramples one underfoot. Even Samson, the hero, the giant, put himself into the hands of Delilah, who had already betrayed him once, only to be betrayed yet again. And when he was captured and blinded by the Philistines, he kept his brave and loving eyes fixed upon the fair traitress until the very end. I breakfasted under the arbor, reading the book of Judith. I could not help envying the heathen Holofernes, who came to such a bloody end, beheaded by a regal lady. The Lord hath smitten him by the hand of a woman. This sentence made a deep impression on me. How unchivalrous these Jews are, I thought. As for their God, he might choose his words better when speaking of the fair sex. The Lord hath smitten him by the hand of a woman. What must I do for him to smite me? Good heavens, here comes our landlady. She has become smaller still overnight. And up there between the creepers, I catch sight of the white dress again. Is it Venus or the widow? This time it must be the widow, for Madame Tartakovska curtsies to me and asks me on the lady's behalf for something to read. I rush to my room and quickly collect a few books. I remember too late that the photograph of my Venus is in one of them. The lady in white must now be deciphering my outpourings. What will she make of them? I hear her laugh. Is she mocking me? A full moon rises over the small fir trees that border the park. A silvery mist drifts across the terrace and the copses and into the landscape as far as the eye can see. The horizon is blurred like trembling water. I feel a strange and urgent call which I am powerless to resist. I dress again and go out into the garden. I feel irresistibly drawn toward the meadow, toward my goddess, my beloved. The night is cool. I shiver. The air is laden with the heavy smell of flowers and foliage. It is intoxicating. What splendor, what music. A nightingale sighs. The stars quiver in the milky glow of the sky. The meadow is smooth as a mirror, like a frozen lake, and there in the center stands the statue of Venus, shining and stately. But what is this? The goddess is draped in fur. A dark sable cloak flows from her marble shoulders down to her feet. I stand bewildered, transfixed. Again I am gripped by an indescribable panic. I take flight. In my hurry I take the wrong path, and just as I am about to turn off into one of the leafy avenues, there before me, seated on a bench, is Venus. Not the marble beauty of a moment ago, but the goddess of love in person, with warm blood and a beating heart. She has come to life for my benefit like Pygmalion's statue. The miracle is not quite complete, for her hair still seems made of marble, and her white dress gleams like moonlight, or is it satin? The dark fur drapes her from shoulder to toe. But her lips are becoming redder, her cheeks are taking on color. Suddenly her eyes shine with a wicked green glitter. She is laughing. Her laughter is so strange, so, indescribable. It is breathtaking. I take to my heels and run, but each time I pause to catch my breath, I hear the mocking laughter. It follows me down the alleys of scented foliage, over the shining lawns, into the moon-flecked shadow of the thickets. I wander utterly lost, cold beads of sweat on my forehead. At last I stop and say to myself sharply, with oneself one is either very polite or very rude, "You fool!" The effect is immediate, like a magic formula. At once I recover my self-possession and become perfectly calm. Delighted with the discovery, I go on repeating, "You fool." Now everything has become clear and distinct. There is the fountain, there the alley of boxwood, and over there the house which I am slowly approaching. Then all of a sudden, through the screen of foliage embroidered with silver moonlight, I catch sight of the white figure again, the beautiful woman whom I worship and from whom I flee in terror. In no time I am inside the house, panting. What game is this that I am playing, I wonder? Am I a mere amateur or a complete fool? The morning is sultry, the air full of intoxicating smells. I am again seated under my arbor, reading the Odyssey. I have come upon the story of the delightful witch who changed her suitors into wild beasts, a spicy tale of love in ancient times. Suddenly there is a rustling in the branches and in the grass, in the leaves of my elm tree, on the terrace, a woman's dress. It is she, Venus, but without her furs, the widow again, and yet it is Venus. Oh, what a woman! She stands clothed in a vaporous white morning gown, looking at me. What a graceful and poetic figure! She is not tall, but not short either. Her face is not so much beautiful as charming and piquant as in the time of the French marquises. What sensitivity, what sweet impish play about her features, her full lips, her not too small mouth. Her skin is so delicate that her blue veins show through even under the fine muslin that covers her arms and breasts. Her red hair, yes, she is a redhead, not blonde or golden-haired, is gathered in thick curls that tumble with a tantalizing charm onto the nape of her neck. Her eyes alight on me like a shaft of green lightning. Yes, her eyes are green and indescribably soft and powerful, green like precious stones, like the unfathomable depths of mountain lakes. She notices my intense disquiet that has made me impolite, for I have remained seated and still have my cap on my head, and she smiles mischievously. I finally rise and bow to her, and she comes toward me with a loud, almost childlike laugh. I stammer, as only an amateur or a fool can do on such an occasion. Thus we made acquaintance. The goddess asked my name and told me hers. She is called Wanda von Donahue, and she is none other than my Venus. Madame, what an idea! What made you think of it? A little picture in one of your books. I do not recall. Those strange lines on the back. Why strange? She looked at me. I have always wanted to meet a true romantic, someone really different, and I suspect you are even wilder than I thought. Really, madame, Again the stupid, despicable stammering. What is more, I began to blush, more like a boy of 16 than a man 10 years older. I frightened you last night. Yes, indeed, but will you not take a seat? She sat down, delighted at my discomfiture, for I was even more afraid of her now in the broad daylight. A charming expression of contempt quivered on her upper lip. It would seem, she began, that for you love and particularly women are hostile forces. You try to defend yourself against them. However, you are quite overcome by the pleasurable torments and exquisite pain which they afford you, a very modern view. You do not share it? No, I do not, she said boldly and decisively, with a shake of her head that sent her red curls flying like flames. I admire the serene sensuality of the Greeks. Pleasure without pain. It is the ideal I strive to realize. I do not believe in the love preached by Christianity and our modern knights of the spirit. Take a look at me. I am worse than a heretic. I am a pagan. Thinkest thou that for long the goddess of love did consider, when once in fair Ida's grove Anchises charmed her eye? These lines from Goethe's Roman elegies have always delighted me. The love we find in nature is the love of heroic times, when the gods and goddesses did love. In those days, desire would follow upon look, enjoyment on desire. All else was affectation, a lie. It was Christianity, whose cruel emblem, the cross, has always seemed to me somewhat horrific, that first brought an alien and hostile element into nature and its innocent instincts. The struggle of the spirit against the senses is the gospel of modern man. I do not wish to have any part in it. Yes, madame, you belong on Mount Olympus, I replied. But we moderns can no longer tolerate the carefree philosophy of the ancients, especially in matters of love. The idea of sharing a woman with others, even if she is an Aspasia, is revolting to us. Like our God, we are jealous. We have made the name of the lovely Phryne into a term of abuse. We prefer a pale, thin virgin of Holbein, who belongs to us alone, to an antique Venus, no matter how divine her beauty, who today loves Anchises, tomorrow Paris, and the day after Adonis. And if nature gains the upper hand and we succumb in passionate ardor to such a woman, her serene happiness seems diabolical and cruel, and our bliss becomes a sin for which we have to atone. So you too are content with the women of today, these poor hysterical creatures who pursue like sleepwalkers the dream of an ideal man, while failing to appreciate the best of men. They are always lamenting their inability to uphold Christian morals. They deceive and are deceived. They search, choose, and reject. They are never happy and cannot give happiness, and they complain about their fate instead of calmly admitting that they would rather live as Helen and Aspasia did. Nature admits of no stability in the relations between man and woman. Madame, allow me to finish. It is only man's egoism that seeks to bury woman like some treasure. Despite holy ceremonies, oaths, and contracts, no permanence can ever be imposed on love. It is the most changeable element in our transient lives. Can you deny that our Christian world is falling into decay? But you will say, the individual who revolts against the institutions of society is immediately rejected, ostracized, stoned. So be it. I am willing to take the risk. My principles are deliberately pagan. I wish to live as I please, and as for your hypocritical respect, I prefer happiness. Whoever invented Christian marriage was right to have invented morality at the same time. I do not for a moment believe that I am eternal. When I take my last breath, and life on earth is at an end for Wanda von Donahue, what difference will it make to me whether my pure spirit joins the choirs of angels, or whether the dust of my body produces new beings? Since the time will come when I shall no longer exist in my present form, what is the point of self-denial? Shall I belong to a husband I no longer love, under the pretext that I once loved him? No, I shall deny myself nothing. I shall love everyone who attracts me, and give happiness to everyone I love. Is that such a dreadful thing? No, it is better by far than to rejoice at the torments that my charms produce, and virtuously turn away from the poor man who burns with passion for me. I am young, rich, and beautiful, and I live for pleasure. As she spoke, her eyes sparkled with mischief. I had taken hold of her hand without knowing quite what I would do with it, and in true amateurish fashion, I quickly let it drop again. Your frankness delights me, I said, and not only that. Again, the confounded awkwardness paralyzed my throat. You were saying? I was saying. I would like to say. Forgive me, madame, I interrupted you. Oh, really? A long silence. She must be thinking something which in my idiom would no doubt be summed up by the word fool. If I may ask, madame, I ventured at last, how did you arrive at these opinions? It is quite simple. My father was a sensible man. From early childhood, I was surrounded by replicas of classical sculptures. At the age of 10, I read Gil Blas. At 12, The Maid of Orleans. Where other children had Tom Thumb, Bluebeard, or Cinderella as friends, mine were Venus, Apollo, Hercules, and Laocoon. My husband was of a happy disposition, and even the incurable illness that struck him shortly after our marriage did not more than cast a brief shadow over his natural gaiety. The night before his death, he took me into his bed, and often, during the long months when he lay dying in his wheelchair, he would say to me playfully, "Well now, have you taken a lover yet?" I used to blush with shame. "Do not hide anything from me," he said. "Although the thought pains me, I know that you must find yourself a congenial husband, or even several. You are a good wife, but you are still a child, and you need playthings." Needless to say that as long as he lived I had no lovers. But it was he who helped me to find my true self, the Grecian woman. The goddess, I interrupted. She smiled. Which goddess? Venus. She frowned and threatened me with her finger. Perhaps even Venus in furs. Wait, I have a very large fur that would cover you from head to foot. I shall catch you in it like a fish in a net. Do you believe, I said with feeling, for an idea had just occurred to me, quite an inept and commonplace idea, which at the time seemed remarkably profound. Do you believe that your theories could be put into practice in our present century? Do you think Venus could display with impunity her joyous, naked charms in the world of today? Not naked, of course, but dressed in fur, yes, she laughed. Would you care to see her? But what then? How do you mean, what then? Beautiful, carefree creatures such as the ancient Greeks can only exist if there are slaves to carry out the prosaic tasks of life. True, she replied mischievously. An Olympian goddess such as I must have a whole army of slaves. Beware of me. Why? I was frightened at the boldness of my why, but she did not appear in the least perturbed. Her lips curled up slightly to reveal her small white teeth, and she asked lightly, as though it were of no consequence, Do you want to be my slave? In matters of love there is no equality, I answered solemnly. If I were faced with the choice of dominating or being dominated, I would choose the latter. It would be far more satisfying to be the slave of a beautiful woman, but I should hate her to be a petty, nagging tyrant. Where should I find a woman to dominate me in a serene and fully conscious manner? Come now, that should not be so difficult. You think not? I, for example, she laughed and arched her back proudly. I have a certain talent for playing despotic roles. I also have the indispensable furs. You were seriously afraid last night, were you not? I was. And now I am beginning to be truly terrified of you. We now see a great deal of each other, I and Venus. We breakfast under my arbor and take tea in her sitting room. I have the opportunity of revealing my pusillanimous talents. Why become versed in science and the arts if not to impress a lovely little woman? But she is not really such a little woman. In fact, she intimidates me dreadfully. Today I made a portrait of her and became aware for the first time how inappropriate is modern clothing to her cameo-like beauty. There is little of the Roman in her features, but much of the Greek. At times I should like to paint her as Psyche, or again as Astarte, as her expression changes from gaiety to languor, ardor to voluptuous weariness, but she would like me to make a straightforward portrait. Let us see. I shall put her in furs. How could I have hesitated? Surely nothing could suit her better than regal fur. I was sitting with her yesterday, reading aloud from the Roman elegies. I laid the book aside and we conversed a little. She seemed enchanted and listened raptly to my every word, her bosom heaving. Or was I mistaken? The rain beat mournfully on the window pane and the fire crackled in the hearth as in midwinter. I felt so much at ease with her that for a moment I forget my fear at being in the presence of such a beautiful woman. I kissed her hand and she did not resist me. Then I seated myself at her feet and read a short poem I had written for her. Venus in furs. Rest your foot upon your slave, lady of fables, tender demon, your marble body reclining amid the myrtles and the aloes. And so on. This time I had indeed gone beyond the first verse, but in obedience to her wishes I gave her the poem, retaining no copy. Now that I would like to transcribe it into my diary, I am only able to remember this particular verse. I am experiencing strange emotions. I do not think that I am in love with Wanda. At least I did not feel when we first met an overwhelming surge of passion. I am aware, however, that her truly divine beauty is working a magical spell on me. It is not a sentimental inclination, but a physical surrender that is coming over me gradually and inexorably. Each day I suffer more, but she does nothing but smile. Today she said to me suddenly, without provocation, "You interest me. Most men are so common, so lacking in verve and poetry, but there is a depth in you, an enthusiasm, and above all, a serious-mindedness that warm my heart. I could become attached to you." After a brief and violent rainstorm, we went to pay a visit to the statue of Venus. All around us the earth was steaming. Clouds of mist rose like the smoke of sacrificial offerings, and the fragments of a rainbow still hovered in the sky. The sparrows had reappeared in the dripping trees and were twittering and hopping from branch to branch in secret delight. The countryside was drenched with fresh odors. We could not cross the meadow, which was still under water, and we stood watching the reflection of the statue on its shimmering surface. A halo of gnats danced around the goddess's head. Wanda was enchanted by the scene, and since we could not sit on the damp benches, she gently leaned on my arm to rest. A sweet weariness had overcome her. Her eyes were half closed, and I felt the caress of her breath on my cheek. How I managed to pluck up the courage I do not know, but I took her hand in mine and asked, "Could you love me?" "Why not?" she replied, giving me a glance that was both serene and playful. I promptly knelt before her and buried my feverish face in the perfumed muslin of her gown. "Severin, this is indecent," she protested. But I took hold of her little foot and pressed my lips to it. "You are taking more and more liberties," she exclaimed. She disengaged herself and fled toward the house, leaving her adorable slipper in my hands. "Is this an omen?" I dared not approach her for the rest of the day, but toward evening, as I was sitting under my arbor, her charming red head peeped through the green foliage of the balcony. "Why do you not come up?" she called impatiently. I ran up the stairs, but on reaching the top, I felt my courage leave me and gave a timid knock on the door. She did not tell me to come in, but came to open the door herself and stood on the threshold. "Where is my slipper?" "It is, I want to," I stammered. "Go and fetch it, and we shall take tea together and chat." When I returned, she was busy making tea. I ceremoniously placed the slipper on the table and stood in a corner like a child waiting to be punished. I noticed that she was frowning slightly, and her mouth wore a severe and domineering expression that enchanted me. Suddenly she burst out laughing. "So are you really in love with me?" "Yes, and it is making me suffer more than you can imagine." "You are suffering?" she laughed again. I was ashamed and mortified, but apparently without reason, for she then said, "Why, I am good to you. I am very fond of you." She held out her hand and gave me the friendliest smile. "Would you like to be my wife?" Wanda looked at me. How can I describe that look? Slightly surprised and then a trifle mocking. "How is it that you have suddenly become so bold?" she asked. "Bold?" "Yes, bold enough to ask someone to marry you, and me in particular." She pointed to the slipper. "Have you already made a friend? But joking aside, do you really want to marry me?" "I do." "Severin, this is a serious matter. I believe you are fond of me, and I of you. Better still, we find each other interesting, and there is no risk of our being bored together. However, as you know, I am a frivolous woman, which is why I take marriage very seriously. If I undertake something, I want to be sure of carrying it out, and I am afraid. No, this will wound you. I beg of you, be frank with me." "Well then, frankly speaking, I do not think I could love a man longer than—" She leaned her head gracefully to one side and mused. "A year? Good heavens, no, a month perhaps." "Even me?" "Yes, even you, or perhaps in your case, 2 months." "2 months? 2 months is too long." "Madame, this is outdoing the ancient Greeks. You see, you cannot bear the truth." Wanda rose and walked across the room. She leant her arm on the mantelpiece and looked at me thoughtfully. "What shall I do with you?" she asked. "Do what you will," I replied with resignation. "Whatever you please." "What inconsistency! First you want me to be your wife, then you offer yourself to me as a plaything." "Wanda, I love you." "We are back where we began. You love me and want me to be your wife, and I do not want to remarry because I have no belief in the permanence of either your feelings or mine. But if I am willing to take the risk of committing myself to you—" "Your proposal demands that I too should commit myself," she replied calmly. "I can indeed imagine belonging to one man for life, but he would have to be a real man who commands my respect and enslaves me by his innate power. Do you understand? And I know from experience that as soon as a man falls in love, he becomes weak, pliable, and ridiculous. He surrenders to the woman and goes down on his knees to her. And I could only love a man before whom I myself should have to kneel. However, I have become so fond of you that I'm willing to give you a trial." I threw myself at her feet. "My goodness, you are already on your knees, a promising beginning." When I had risen, she continued, "I shall give you a year to win my love, to convince me that we are suited to each other and that we might live together. If you succeed, I am your wife, a wife, Severin, who will perform her duties faithfully. During this year, we shall live as man and wife." The blood rushed to my head, and her cheeks, too, were set ablaze. "We shall live together in the daytime," she pursued, "and share all our habits so that we may find out whether we are really suited to each other. I shall grant you all the rights of a husband, a lover, and a friend. Are you satisfied?" "I have no choice." "You are not forced to accept." "So be it." "Splendid. Now you are talking like a man. Here is my hand." For 10 days, I have not left her side for a single hour, except at night. I am allowed to gaze into her eyes continuously, to accompany her everywhere. My love is like a bottomless abyss into which I seem to be sinking deeper and deeper, and from which nothing can save me now. This afternoon we were seated at the foot of the statue of Venus. I was picking flowers and tossing them into her lap, while she wove them into floral chains with which to adorn our goddess. Suddenly Wanda looked at me so strangely that my senses ran wild, and passion enveloped me like a net of flames. I abandoned all restraint, threw my arms around her, and kissed her lips, while she pressed me against her heaving breast. "Are you angry?" I asked. "I am never angry about things that are natural," she replied, "but I am afraid that you are suffering." "Oh, I am suffering dreadfully." "My poor friend." She smoothed the tangled hair from my forehead. "I hope it is not my fault." "No," I replied, "but my love for you has become a kind of madness. The thought that I could lose you, that I may well lose you one day, is a constant torture." "But you do not even possess me," said Wanda, with the same vibrant look, both dewy-eyed and consuming, that had produced such a turmoil within me. She rose, and with her small transparent hands placed a crown of blue anemones on the white stone curls of the statue. I could scarcely resist putting my arm around her waist. "I can no longer live without you, oh beautiful woman. Only believe me, these are not just fine words. This is no mere fancy. I feel in the depths of my soul that my life is bound up with yours. If you leave me, I shall be lost. I shall perish utterly." "But that will not be necessary, since I love you." She took me by the chin. "You simpleton." "But you will only be mine under conditions, while I belong to you unconditionally." "Severin, this is all wrong," she said, in an almost frightened voice. "Do you not know me yet? Do you absolutely refuse to know me? I am kind when people behave reasonably, but if they are totally submissive to me, then I become tyrannical." "So be it. Be a tyrant, be a despot," I cried with exultation, "but be mine, mine forever." I prostrated myself before her and threw my arms around her knees. "This will end badly, my friend," she said severely and without the least emotion. "Oh, it must never end," I cried, beside myself. "Only death shall part us. If you cannot be mine entirely and forever, then I want to be your slave. I want to suffer anything to be able to stay by your side." "Calm yourself," she said, bending down to kiss my forehead. "I am kind to you, but you are not taking the right road to win me and keep me." "I will do anything you wish, only never leave me." "Get up." I obeyed. "You are a peculiar man," said Wanda. "So you want to possess me at all costs?" "Yes, at all costs." "But what would be the value of possessing me if, for example—" She thought for a moment and eyed me in a disquieting manner. "If I did not love you any more, if I belonged to another man." This was too much for me. I looked at her as she sat before me, confident and controlled. Her eyes had an icy brilliance. "You see," she went on, "the thought terrifies you." A gentle smile lit up her face. "It is true. I am horrified to think that the woman I love, the woman who has accepted my love, could ever give herself to another without any thought for me. But would I still be free to choose? If I love this woman, if I love her to distraction, should I turn my back on her and perish for the sake of my pride? Should I put a bullet through my head? There are two kinds of women that I can love. If I cannot find a noble and spirited woman willing to share my destiny in complete faithfulness, then give me no half measures, no lukewarm compromises. I prefer to be at the mercy of a woman without virtue, fidelity, or pity, for she is also my idol in her magnificent selfishness. If I cannot enjoy to the full love's perfect bliss, then let me empty to the dregs its cup of bitterness and woe. Let me be ill-treated by the woman I love, and the more cruelly the better, for this is also a form of pleasure. "Are you aware of what you are saying?" exclaimed Wanda. "I love you with all my soul," I continued, "with all my senses. You are necessary to my very existence, you and all that emanates from you. You must choose. Make of me what you will, your husband or your slave." "Very well," said Wanda tersely, knitting her arched eyebrows. "It will be most amusing to have complete power over a man who interests me and who loves me. At least I am sure to be entertained. You are rash enough to leave the choice to me, so I am choosing. I want you to be my slave. I shall treat you like a plaything." "Oh, do," I cried, with a mixture of fear and rapture. "Marriage can only be founded on equality and mutual understanding, but great passions are born from the meeting of opposites. It is because we are opposites, indeed almost enemies, that my love for you is part hatred, part fear. But in such relations, one person must be the hammer, the other the anvil. I choose to be the anvil. I cannot be happy if I must look down on the woman I love. I want to be able to worship a woman, and I can only do so if she is cruel to me." "But, Severin," replied Wanda almost angrily, "do you believe me capable of maltreating a man who loves me as you do, and whom I love?" "Why not, if I adore you all the more for it? I am only truly able to love a woman who dominates me, who overpowers me with her beauty, her temperament, her intelligence, and her willpower, a woman who rules over me." "Then you are attracted by what others find repulsive?" "That is right. It is my peculiar nature." "Come now, there is really nothing so peculiar nor remarkable about your passion. Who does not find beautiful furs irresistible? We all know, we all sense how closely related are sensual pleasure and cruelty. But in my case, these things are taken to extremes." "You mean that reason has little power over you, and that you are weak and sensuous by nature?" "Were the martyrs also weak and sensuous?" "The martyrs?" "Precisely. The martyrs were supersensual beings who found positive pleasure in pain, and who sought horrible tortures, even death, as others seek enjoyment. I too am supersensual, madame, just as they were." "Take care that you do not also become a martyr to love, the martyr of a woman." We were seated on Wanda's balcony. The night was warm and filled with the perfumes of summer. A twofold roof sheltered us, first the green ceiling of climbing plants, then the vault of heaven strewn with innumerable stars. The low, plaintive call of a lovesick cat floated in from the park, while I sat at the feet of my goddess, telling her about my childhood. "Were these tendencies already marked in you in those days?" asked Wanda. "Certainly. I cannot remember a period when I was not subject to them. Already in my cradle, as my mother later recounted, I was a supersensualist. I spurned the breast of my sturdy nurse and had to be fed on goat's milk. As a little boy, I was inexplicably shy with women, which merely went to show that they affected me profoundly. I was oppressed by the high vaults and shadowy interior of churches, and was seized with anxiety before the glittering altars and the holy images. At times I would steal into my father's library, as if to enjoy a forbidden pleasure, and would gaze upon a plaster statue of Venus. I would kneel before her and recite the prayers I had been taught, the Lord's Prayer, the Hail Mary, and the Creed. One night I left my bed to pay her a visit. The light from the crescent moon fell upon me and bathed the goddess in a cold blue light. I prostrated myself before her and kissed her feet in the way I had seen my fellow countrymen kiss the feet of the dead Savior. An insuperable desire took hold of me. I stood up, threw my arms around her beautiful body, and kissed her ice-cold lips. A deep shudder went through me. Later in a dream, the goddess appeared to me, standing by my bed and raising her arm in a threatening gesture. I was sent to school at an early age and soon graduated to the gymnasium. I greedily seized upon all that the world of antiquity could offer me, and I soon became more familiar with the gods of Greece than with the religion of Jesus. With Paris, I gave Venus the fateful apple. I saw Troy burn, and I followed Ulysses on his adventures. The archetypes of all that is beautiful deeply penetrated my consciousness, and consequently, at an age when other boys are rude and uncouth, I showed extreme disgust for everything base, common, and ugly. When I first began to think about love, it seemed to my raw adolescent's eyes particularly crude and vulgar. I avoided all contact with the fair sex, while being supersensual in the extreme. When I was about 14, my mother engaged a charming chambermaid, young and pretty, with a well-rounded figure. One day, as I was studying Tacitus and going into raptures over the virtues of the Germanic tribes, she came to sweep my room. Suddenly she stopped, bent over me with her broom in her hand, and her delicious lips gently touched mine. The kiss of this amorous kitten sent a shiver down my spine, but I raised my Germania to shield me against the temptress and left the room in indignation. Wanda broke into a peal of delighted laughter. "You really are an exceptional man, but do go on." There is another event from the same period which I shall never forget. A distant aunt of mine, Countess Sobel, came to stay with my parents. She was a beautiful, stately woman with a charming smile, but I hated her because of her reputation in the family of being a Messalina, and I was as rude, nasty, and loutish with her as I could be. One day when my parents had gone to town, my aunt decided to take advantage of their absence to administer justice to me. Wearing her kazabeka, her fur-lined jacket, she burst into my room, followed by the cook, the kitchen maid, and the little kitten whom I had spurned. Without asking any questions, they seized me and, in spite of my resistance, bound me hand and foot. Then, with a wicked smile, my aunt rolled up her sleeve and began to beat me with a long switch. She laid about me so hard that she drew blood, and although I tried to be heroic, I screamed and wept and finally begged for mercy. She had me unbound, but then I had to go down on my knees to her, thank her for the punishment, and kiss her hand. What a supersensual lunatic I was! My taste for women was awakened by the blows of a beautiful and voluptuous creature in a fur jacket who looked like an angry queen. From that day on, my aunt became the most desirable woman on God's earth. My Cato-like austerity and my shyness in the presence of women were nothing more than an excessively developed aestheticism. Sensuality became my own personal cult, and I swore never to squander its sacred treasures on any ordinary being, but to reserve them for the ideal woman, if possible for the goddess of love herself. I was very young when I went to the university in the capital, which was where my aunt lived. In those days, my room looked like that of Dr. Faustus. Everything was thrown together in wild disorder, large closets stuffed with books which I bought second-hand from a Jew in Cervanica, globes, atlases, files, astronomical charts, animal skeletons, skulls, and busts of famous men. At any moment, Mephistopheles might have appeared behind my large green stove in the guise of a wandering scholar. I studied indiscriminately, without system or selection, chemistry, alchemy, history, astronomy, philosophy, jurisprudence, anatomy, and literature. I read Homer, Virgil, Ossian, Schiller, Goethe, Shakespeare, Cervantes, Molière, the Koran, the Cosmos, and the memoirs of Casanova. As this chaos grew from day to day, so did my unbridled imagination and my supersensuality. I always carried the image of the ideal woman in my mind. Sometimes she appeared on a bed of roses surrounded by cupids, in a decor of skulls and leather-bound books. Sometimes she loomed in Olympian garb, with the severe white face of the plaster Venus, and at other times I saw her with the thick tresses of brown hair, the laughing blue eyes, and the casabeka trimmed with ermine that were my pretty aunt's. One morning, when her smiling beauty had once again emerged from the golden mists of my imagination, I sent out to seek Countess Sobel. My aunt received me in an agreeable and even cordial manner, giving me a kiss that threw my senses into a turmoil. She was approaching 40, but like most of the famous courtesans on whom time leaves no trace, she was still extremely desirable. She was wearing a casabeka, but this time it was a green velvet one trimmed with mink. There was no longer any trace in her of the severity that had delighted me in the past. Far from treating me cruelly, she allowed me quite naturally to give her proof of my adoration. She found out all too soon what a supersensual, innocent fool I was, and it amused her to make me happy. Indeed, I was as ecstatic as a young god. What delight to kneel before her and be allowed to kiss the hand that had once chastised me. What marvelous hands they were, so well shaped, so white and adorably plump. To tell the truth, I believe it was only those hands I was in love with. I played with them, hid them under the dark fur, held them in the light of the fire, and could not have my fill of gazing at them. I noticed Wanda involuntarily glancing at her own hands and could not help smiling. You may form an idea of the heights reached in those days by my supersensuality, by the fact that I was in love solely with the fierce beating I had received from my aunt, and 2 years later, when I courted a young actress, with the role she played on stage. I then fell in love with a most respectable woman who pretended to an inaccessible virtue, but who finally betrayed me with a rich Jew. You see, because I was sold and betrayed by a woman who affected the strictest principles and the most refined sensibility, I developed a hatred for poetic and sentimental virtue. Give me a woman honest enough to say, I am La Pompadour, a Lucretia Borgia. She is the woman I will worship. Wanda rose and opened the window. You have an extraordinary way of arousing one's imagination, she said. My nerves are all on edge and my pulse is throbbing. If all you say is true, then you are giving vice a halo. Your ideal is a brazen and inspired courtesan. Ah, you are the sort of man who will utterly corrupt a woman. In the middle of the night, I heard a tap on my window. I rose to open it and was struck with horror at the vision before me. It was Venus in furs as she had first appeared to me. Your stories have disturbed me so much that I have not been able to sleep a wink. Come and keep me company for a while. I shall be with you immediately. When I entered her room, Wanda was huddled in front of the fireplace where she had kindled a small fire. Autumn is drawing on, she began. The nights are already chilly. I hope you will not mind, but I cannot take off my furs until the room is a little warmer. Not mind, naughty lady, you know me very well. I slipped my arm around her and kissed her. Of course, I know, she said. But how did you acquire this fondness for furs? I was born with it, I replied. I already showed signs of it as a child. In any case, it is a natural law that fur has a stimulating effect on highly strung people. It exerts a strong and mysterious physical attraction to which no one is immune. Science has recently established that there is a relation between electricity and heat, and that their effect on the human body is similar. Torrid climates make for passionate natures, and warm atmospheres produce exaltation. The same is true of electricity. This is why cats have always had such a beneficial and magical effect on spiritual and impressionable people. The movement of their long, graceful tails, their magnetism, their fur crackling with electricity. No wonder they were the favorite pets of men such as Mahomet, Richelieu, Crébillon, Rousseau, and Wieland. Then a woman in furs is nothing more than a large cat, exclaimed Wanda, a sort of highly charged electric battery. That is right, I replied, and that is how I interpret the symbolic significance of furs as the attribute of power and beauty. In ancient times, monarchs and noblemen claimed furs as their exclusive right, and great painters used them to adorn their queenly beauties. Raphael could find no more exquisite frame for the divine figure of La Fortunera, nor Titian for the rose-like body of his beloved. Thank you for the learned discussion on eroticism, said Wanda, but you have not told me everything. Does not fur have a special significance for you personally? Certainly, I said. I have often told you that pain holds a peculiar attraction for me, and that nothing kindles my passion quite so much as tyranny, cruelty, and above all unfaithfulness in a beautiful woman. I cannot imagine this woman without furs. She is a strange ideal born of the aesthetics of ugliness, with the soul of Nero in the body of Phryne. I understand, said Wanda. It gives a woman a haughty and imposing quality. That is not all, I continued. As you know, I am a supersensualist. With me, everything takes root in the imagination and finds its nourishment there. As a sensitive and mature youngster of about 10, I came across the lives of the martyrs. I read with a horror mingled with intense pleasure how they suffered the worst torments almost with a smile, how they languished in prison cells, were tortured on the rack, pierced with arrows, cast into boiling pitch, thrown to wild animals, or nailed on the cross. To endure horrible tortures seemed from then on the highest form of delight, particularly if the torturer was a beautiful woman, for to my mind the poetic and the diabolical have always been united in woman. I turned this idea into a veritable religion. Sensuality took on a sacred quality. Indeed, it seemed the only sacred principle, and woman in her beauty became something divine, since she was called upon to perform the most important function in life, the continuation of the species. Woman seemed to be the personification of nature. She was Isis, and man was her priest and slave. She treated him cruelly, just as nature casts aside whatever has served her purpose as soon as she has no more need of it. As for man, it seemed to me that to be abused by woman, and even to die at her hand, could only be pure bliss to him. I envied King Gunther, who was fettered by the mighty Brunhilde on their wedding night. I envied the poor troubadour whose capricious mistress sewed him into a wolfskin and hunted him like game. I envied the knight Stivad trapped in the steppes of Prague by the fearless Amazon Sharka, who took him to her divine castle, and after she had played with him for a while, had him broken on the wheel. "How abominable!" cried Wanda. "I would like you to fall into the hands of such a savage woman. When you were sewn in the wolfskin, mauled by the hounds, or stretched on the rack, poetry would quickly lose its charm." "Do you think so?" "I doubt it." "You are not in your right mind." "That is quite possible. But let me continue." I went on avidly reading tales of the most fearful cruelty. I gazed with particular relish at paintings and engravings depicting such practices, and I noticed that in every scene furs were the attribute of the torturer. The most bloodthirsty tyrants that ever sat upon a throne, and murderous inquisitors who had heretics persecuted and burned, and all the women whom the great book of history has placed under the sign of beauty, lust, and violence. Libussa, Lucretia Borgia, Agnes of Hungary, Queen Margot, Isabeau, the Sultana Roxolana, and the Russian Serenas of the last century, all wore fur garments and ermine robes. "So furs now arouse strange fantasies in you," said Wanda coquettishly, twining the magnificent sable scarf about her so that the dark, shining fur played delightfully around her bust and arms. "Come now, how do you feel at this moment, half on the rack?" Her piercing green eyes looked at me with a strange expression of mocking satisfaction. Overcome by passion, I threw myself at her feet and put my arms around her. "Yes, you have brought my dearest fantasies to life," I exclaimed. "They have lain dormant too long." "And what are they?" She put her hand on the nape of my neck. A sweet dizziness came over me on feeling the warmth of her little hand, and on meeting the tender, searching gaze that she let fall on me through half-closed eyes. "To be the slave of a woman, a beautiful woman whom I love and worship." "And who in return ill-treats you," laughed Wanda. "Yes, who fetters me, whips me, and kicks me, and who all the while belongs to another." "And who has the impudence, after driving you mad with jealousy, to confront you with your happy rival, to hand you over to his brutality. Why not? Or does the final picture appeal to you less?" I looked at Wanda in horror. "You exceed my wildest dreams." "Ah, we women have fertile imaginations," she said. "Beware. If you do find your ideal, you may well be treated more cruelly than you anticipated." "I am afraid I have found my ideal," I cried, pressing my burning face against her knees. "But not in me?" asked Wanda. She threw off her furs and began to dance around the room, laughing. I could still hear her as I went downstairs, and as I emerged, thoughtful, into the courtyard below, her impish laughter floated down to me. "Am I to incarnate your ideal?" asked Wanda with a mischievous air when we met in the park today. At first, I could find no answer. The most contradictory feelings battled within me. She sat down on one of the stone benches and began to play with a flower. "Well then, shall I?" I knelt before her and took her hands. "I beg of you once more, be my wife, my faithful and honest wife. But if you cannot, then be my ideal, entirely and without reservations. You know that I will give you my hand in a year's time if you turn out to be the man for me, replied Wanda seriously. But I do believe you would be grateful if I were to realize your fantasies. Come now, which would you prefer? I believe that everything I have imagined is already present in your nature. You are under an illusion. I believe, I continued, that you are quite delighted to have a man entirely in your power, and that you would enjoy tormenting him. No, no, she cried. And yet, she looked thoughtful. I do not understand myself any longer, but I have a confession to make. You have so corrupted my imagination and inflamed my blood that I am beginning to find all this enjoyable. The enthusiasm with which you speak of such women as La Pompadour, Catherine II, and all these selfish, cruel, and frivolous creatures thrills me to the depths of my soul. I am prompted to become like these women who, in spite of their wicked ways, were slavishly worshipped all their lives and even after death. You are turning me into a miniature despot, a household pompadour. Well then, I said feverishly, if it is in you, follow your natural bent, but no half measures. If you cannot be a true and loyal wife, then be a demon. Excitement and lack of sleep and the proximity of such a beautiful woman had reduced me to a feverish state. I cannot remember what I said, but I know that I kissed her feet and lifted one of them to place it on my neck. She quickly withdrew it and rose almost angrily. If you love me, Severin, she said sternly, never speak of this again. Do you hear? Never again, or I might really. She smiled and sat down again. I am perfectly serious, I replied. I adore you to such a degree that I am prepared to put up with anything for the sake of spending my life by your side. Severin, again, I am warning you. Your warnings are in vain. You may do as you will with me, only never send me away. Severin, said Wanda, I am a young and frivolous woman. It is dangerous for you to surrender so totally to me. You will end up by becoming my plaything. Who will protect you then? I might take unfair advantage of your folly. You are too noble to dream of that. Power makes one presumptuous. Then be presumptuous, I cried. Trample on me. Wanda clasped her hands behind my neck and gazed into my eyes. I am afraid of not being capable of it, but for you I am willing to try, for I love you, Severin, as I have loved no other man. Today she suddenly put on her hat and shawl and ordered me to come shopping with her. She asked to see some whips, long ones with short handles such as are used on hounds. These should be suitable, said the shopkeeper. No, they are much too small, she said, giving me a sidelong glance. I need a big one. For a bulldog, I suppose, said the shopkeeper. Yes, she cried, like those they use in Russia on disobedient slaves. After some searching, she finally chose a whip, the very sight of which made me shiver. Now goodbye, Severin, she said. There are a few other things that I want to buy alone. I took leave of her and went for a walk. On my return, I caught sight of Wanda coming out of a furrier's. She beckoned to me. You ought to think again, she said gleefully. I have never hidden the fact that I am fascinated by your combination of sensuality and earnestness. I am thrilled at the idea that the most serious-minded man in the world could be entirely devoted to my person and actually lying at my feet in ecstasy. But will my excitement last? A woman can begin by loving a man, then she treats him like a slave, and finally she kicks him away. Very well then, kick me away when you have had enough of me. I want to be your slave. I am aware of dangerous forces lurking within me, said Wanda, after we had gone a few steps. You are awakening them, and it will do you no good. You paint such an attractive picture of pleasure-seeking, cruelty, and arrogance. What would you say if I were to try my hand at them and make you my first victim? Remember the story of the tyrant Dionysius and the man who invented the torture of the bronze ox. To try out this new method of torture, Dionysius had the inventor shut up inside it and roasted alive to see whether his moans really imitated the lowing of an ox. Perhaps I am a female Dionysius. Be one, I cried. All my dreams would be fulfilled. I belong to you for better or for worse. You must make the choice. I am driven by the destiny that has taken hold of me, a diabolical and all-powerful fate. My beloved, I do not wish to see you today or tomorrow, only the evening of the day after, and then as my slave, your mistress, Wanda. As my slave was underlined, I read the note, which I had received early in the morning, a second time. I then saddled the little donkey and took to the mountains to find relief from my yearning in the beauty of the Carpathian scenery. I returned tired, hungry, and above all in love. I quickly changed my clothes and knocked at her door. "Come in." I enter. She is standing in the middle of the room, wearing a gown of white satin that ripples over her body like liquid light, a red velvet casabeca edged with rich ermine. A small diamond tiara rests on her powdered hair. She stands with her arms folded, a frown on her face. "Wanda!" I run to put my arms around her and kiss her, but she retreats a step and eyes me from head to foot. "Slave." "Mistress." I kneel and kiss the hem of her gown. "That is better." "Oh, how beautiful you are." "Do I please you?" She postures in front of the mirror and looks at herself with proud satisfaction. "You drive me to distraction." She gives a slight pout of contempt and looks at me with narrowed, mocking eyes. "Give me the whip." I look about the room. "No," she cries, "stay on your knees." She goes over to the mantelpiece, takes the whip off the ledge and, watching me with a smile, makes it whistle through the air. Then she slowly rolls up the sleeves of her fur jacket. "Wonderful woman." The words escape from my mouth. "Quiet, slave." She scowls and suddenly strikes me with the whip. The next moment she bends over me with compassion and tenderly strokes the back of my neck. "Did I hurt you?" she asks, torn between fear and shame. "No," I reply, "and even if you had, the pain you cause is pure delight. Whip me if it gives you pleasure." But it does not give me pleasure. Again the strange dizziness overcomes me. "Whip me," I implore. "Whip me without mercy." Wanda brandishes the whip and strikes twice. "Have you had enough now?" "No." "Seriously not?" "Whip me, I beg of you. It is a joy to me." "Yes, because you know very well that I am not in earnest," she replies, "and that I have not the heart to do you harm. These barbaric games revolt me. If I were really the kind of woman who whips her slave, you would be filled with horror." "No, Wanda, I love you more than myself. I am utterly devoted to you. In all seriousness, you may do whatever you wish with me, whatever your whims dictate." "Severin!" "Tread on me," I cry, throwing myself before her. "I dislike play acting," said Wanda impatiently. "Then hurt me in earnest." A disturbing silence. "Severin, I am warning you one last time." "If you love me, be cruel to me," I implore. "If I love you," repeats Wanda. "Very well." She backs away and looks at me with a threatening smile. "Be my slave and know what it means to be at the mercy of a woman." Whereupon she gives me a kick. "How do you like that?" She brandishes the whip. "Get up." I begin to rise. "Not that way," she orders. "Stay on your knees." I obey and she proceeds to whip me. The blows fall thick and fast on my back and arms. One of them cuts into my flesh and the burn lingers on, but the pain delights me, for it comes from her whom I adore and for whom at any moment I am ready to lay down my life. She stops. "I am beginning to enjoy it," she says. "That is enough for today." But a diabolical curiosity has taken hold of me. I want to see how far your strength will go. I have a dreadful desire to see you tremble under my whip, to see you suffer, to hear at last your moans and screams, your cries for mercy, while I go on whipping you without pity until you lose consciousness. Yes, you have awakened dangerous tendencies in me. Now get up. I seize her hand and press it to my lips. What impudence! She shoves me away with her foot. Out of my sight, slave. I wake after a feverish night troubled by nightmares. The dawn is just breaking. Which of my confused memories are real? What have I experienced? What have I merely dreamed? I have been whipped, that much is certain. I can still feel each blow. I can count the burning wheels on my body. And it was she who whipped me. Yes, now I know it all. My dream has come true. What now? Has the realization of my fantasy liberated me? No, I am merely a little tired, and her cruelty fills me with rapture. Oh, how I love her, how I worship her. I cannot begin to express my feelings and the extent of my devotion to her. What bliss to be her slave. She calls me from her balcony. I race upstairs and find her standing on the doorstep, holding out a friendly hand. I am so ashamed, she says. I put my arms around her, and she rests her head on my shoulder. Why? Tried to forget yesterday's horrible scene, she says in a trembling voice. For your sake, I satisfied these mad wishes. Now let us be reasonable. We shall be happy and love each other, and in a year's time I shall be your wife. My mistress, I cry, and I your slave. Not another word about slavery, cruelty, or whips, interrupts Wanda. The only thing I shall still grant you is the fur jacket. Come and help me into it. The little bronze clock surmounted by a cupid informed us that it was midnight. I rose and prepared to leave. Wanda said nothing but embraced me, drew me back onto the ottoman, and began to kiss me again. This silent language was so easy to understand and so persuasive. It told me more than I dared interpret. A languid abandon came over her whole being. What voluptuous softness in her half-closed eyes, in her red hair shimmering under the white powder. The red and white satin rustled with each of her movements, and the ermine caressed her shoulders with a snake-like movement. I beg of you, I stammered, but you will be angry. Do with me what you will, she whispered. I belong to you. Then trample me underfoot, I implore you, or I shall go mad. Have I not forbidden you, said Wanda. You are incorrigible. Alas, I am dreadfully in love. I fell on my knees and hid my burning face in her lap. I really believe, said Wanda thoughtfully, that your madness is nothing but an unsatisfied, diabolical sensuality. Such afflictions are a product of our monstrous side. If you were less virtuous, you would be perfectly sane. Then make me sane, I murmured. My hands ran wild over her hair and over the gleaming fur that rose and fell with her breast like a moonlit ocean, and threw my senses into confusion. I kissed her. No, she kissed me, wildly, passionately, as though she wanted to devour me. I was almost delirious, and had long since lost my reason. Panting, I tried to free myself from her arms. What is wrong? Asked Wanda. I am suffering horribly. You are suffering? She broke into playful laughter. You may well laugh, I moaned. Have you no notion? Suddenly she became serious again, took my head in her hands, and pressed me to her breast. Wanda, I stammered. You really do enjoy suffering, she said, and laughed again. But wait, I shall bring you to your senses. I shall no longer ask whether you want to belong to me forever or only for a brief instant, I cried. I want to enjoy my happiness to the full. You are mine at this moment, and I prefer to lose you than never to possess you. Now you are being unreasonable, she said, kissing me again with those fiendish lips. I tore off the ermine jacket and the lace and felt her naked bosom heaving against mine. Then I lost consciousness. The first thing I remember is when I saw blood dripping from my hand and asked her in a flat voice, Did you scratch me? No, I believe I bit you. It is strange how a love affair changes phase as soon as a new character appears on the scene. We spent many wonderful days together. We walked in the mountains and by the lakes. We read together, and all the while I completed my portrait of Wanda. How we loved one another. Her lovely face shone with happiness. Then one day a friend of hers arrives, a divorced woman, a little older, a little more experienced, and less scrupulous than Wanda. She is already making her influence felt in many matters. Wanda frowns often and shows a certain impatience with me. Does she no longer love me? This unbearable constraint has now lasted 2 weeks. The friend lives with Wanda, and we can never be alone. Furthermore, the two ladies are surrounded by an admiring circle of gentlemen. With my intensity and passion, I cut a ridiculous figure as Wanda's lover. She treats me like a stranger. Today, while we were out walking, she fell behind the others and waited for me to catch up with her. Realizing that she had done this on purpose, I was overjoyed. However, this is what she said. My friend does not understand how I can love you. She finds you neither handsome nor particularly attractive. She regales me from morning till night with tales of the brilliant and frivolous life to be led in the capital, the ambitions I might achieve, the advantages I would enjoy, and the distinguished suitors I would attract. But what do I care for all that, since it is you I love? Her words took my breath away for a moment. In God's name, Wanda, do not let me stand in the way of your happiness. Do not be concerned about me. So saying, I raised my hat to her and let her walk ahead, which she did with a surprised look, but without saying a word. On the way back, when I found myself accidentally by her side, she squeezed my hand furtively and gave me a glance that was so warm and radiant that all the torments of the last few days were forgotten and my wounds were healed. Now I know just how much I love her. My friend has been complaining about you, said Wanda today. She must have sensed that I despise her. But why do you despise her, you foolish man? Exclaimed Wanda, taking me by the ears. Because she is a hypocrite, I said. I have time only for a woman who is truly virtuous or who openly leads a life of pleasure. As I do, replied Wanda playfully. But you see, my child, women can only live up to these ideals in special cases. They can be neither as purely sensual nor as spiritually free as men. Their love is always a mixture of the sensual and the intellectual. Woman's heart desires to enchain man permanently, while she herself is subject to change, with the result that discord, lying, and deceitfulness invade her life, usually against her will, and her whole character is affected. That is certainly true, I said. The transcendental quality that woman seeks to confer on love leads her into deception. But that is the way the world goes, Wanda interrupted. Take this woman. She has a lover in Luau, and she has found a new admirer here. She deceives them both, and yet she is worshipped by all and highly respected in society. That may well be so, I exclaimed, but let her leave you out of it. She treats you like a vulgar object. Is there any harm in that? Asked Wanda. Every woman has the instinct and the ability to make the most of her charms. It is an excellent thing to give oneself without love or pleasure. By keeping one's self-control, one reaps all the advantages of the situation. Wanda, what are you saying? Why not? Mark these words. Never be sure of the woman you love, for there are more snares in her nature than you can ever imagine. Women are neither as good as their admirers maintain, nor as bad as their detractors would have them be. Their character is merely a lack of character. The best of women can momentarily flounder in the mud, just as the worst can unexpectedly rise to great heights of generosity, to the confusion of those who vilify her. Every woman, good or bad, is capable at any moment of the most diabolical thoughts, actions, or emotions, as well as the most divine, the purest as well as the most sordid. In spite of all the advances of civilization, woman has remained as she was on the day nature's hands shaped her. She is like a wild animal, faithful or faithless, kindly or cruel, depending on the impulse that rules her. A profound and serious culture is needed to produce moral character. Man, even when he is selfish or wicked, lives by principles. Woman only obeys her feelings. Never forget this, and never be sure of the woman you love. The friend has left. At last an evening alone with her. Wanda is so gracious, so tender, that one might think she had saved for this happy evening all the love she has denied me these last few days. What bliss to feel her lips so constantly close to mine, to swoon in her arms, and then, as she lies against my breast relaxed and totally mine, to melt into each other's pleasure-drunk eyes. I cannot yet understand that this woman is mine, totally mine. And yet she is right on one point, began Wanda, without moving nor even opening her eyes, as if she were asleep. Is she? She remained silent. Your friend? She nodded. Yes, she is right. You are not a man. You are a romantic spirit, a charming suitor, and you would certainly make a priceless slave, but I cannot imagine you in the role of a husband. I started. What is the matter? Are you trembling? I tremble at the thought that I may lose you for no good reason." "Come now, are you any the less happy at this moment?" she asked. "Does the knowledge that I have belonged to others before you, and that others after you will possess me, does that rob you of your enjoyment? Would your pleasure be less great if another man were to share it?" "Wanda, listen," she went on, "this could well be a solution. You want to keep me forever. As for me, I am fond of you, and you suit me so well that I would like to live with you permanently, if I might, in addition to you." "What a thought!" I cried. "You horrify me." "Do you love me any the less?" "On the contrary." Wanda raised herself on her left arm. To hold a man permanently, I believe, one must of all not be faithful to him. What honest wife has ever been adored as much as a hetera? Yes, it is quite true that a woman's infidelity affords a painful but exquisite pleasure. "And what if I were to grant you that pleasure?" taunted Wanda. "I should suffer abominably, but I should only adore you the more. You would have to be entirely honest with me, however, and have the diabolical grandeur to admit, I shall love no one but you, but I shall bestow my favors on anyone I please." Wanda shook her head. "Lying is contrary to my nature, but what man is brave enough to take the truth? If I were to say to you, this joyful sensuality, this paganism is my ideal, would you have the strength to bear it?" "Certainly, I am ready to endure anything in order not to lose you. I am aware how tenuous is my link with you." "But Severin—" "Yes, it is the truth," I said, "and that is why—" "That is why you would like," she smiled mischievously, "have I guessed?" "To be your slave," I cried, "your docile and will-less possession, without ever being a burden on you, while you drink from the cup of life, while you lie in the lap of luxury and enjoy every happiness. I would like to serve you, to put on your shoes on bended knee." "You may well be right, after all," replied Wanda, "for it is only as a slave that you could endure my loving others. What is more, the carefree pleasures of the ancient world are unthinkable without slavery. Ah, it must make one feel like a god to see a man kneeling, trembling before one. I want to have slaves, Severin. Do you hear?" "Am I not your slave?" "Listen to me," said Wanda excitedly, grasping my hand. "I want to be yours for as long as I love you." "For a month, maybe even 2. And then?" "And then you will be my slave." "What about you?" "What a question. I am a goddess. Sometimes I steal down from my Olympian heights and secretly visit you. But what is all this?" She gazed into the distance, her chin in her hands. "A golden dream that will never come true." She was overcome by a strange melancholy, a wistfulness that I had never seen in her before. "And why should it not be feasible?" I began. "Because slavery does not exist any longer." "Then let us go to a country where it does, to the Orient or Turkey," I said eagerly. "Would you really like to?" said Wanda, her eyes shining. "In all seriousness, I would. I want your power over me to become law. Then my life will rest in your hands, and I shall have no protection whatsoever against you. Ah, what delight to depend entirely on your whims, to be constantly at your beck and call. And then, what bliss, when the goddess shows clemency, the slave will have permission to kiss the lips on which his life and death depend." I knelt and leaned my burning forehead on her knees. "Severin, you are feverish," said Wanda compassionately. "Do you really love me so much?" She pressed me to her bosom and covered me with kisses. Her voice was trembling as she asked, "Is it really your wish?" "I swear by God and my honor that I shall be your slave, wherever and whenever you wish, as soon as you command," I cried, beside myself with emotion. "And what if I should take you at your word?" "Do so." What an attractive idea, that a man who worships me and whom I love with all my soul should be dependent on my every whim, that he should be my possession, my slave, while I— She gave me a strange look. "It will be your fault if I become utterly frivolous. I think you are almost afraid of me now, but I have your oath, and I shall keep it." "I shall see to that," she retorted. "The idea appeals to me so much that I cannot let it remain a fantasy any longer. You must become my slave, and as for me, I shall try to be Venus in furs. I thought I understood her at last, but now I see that I must begin all over again. With what disgust she greeted my theories a while ago, and with what eagerness she now prepares their execution. She has drawn up a contract by which I am to commit myself, on my honor, to be her slave for as long as she wishes. Her arm around my neck, she reads me this incredible document, punctuating each sentence with a kiss. But this contract only mentions my duties, I said teasingly. Naturally, she replied with great seriousness. You are no longer my lover, and therefore I am relieved of all duties and obligation toward you. You must regard my favors as pure benevolence. You can no longer lay claim to any rights, and there are no limits to my power over you. Consider that you are little better now than a dog or an object. You are my thing, the toy that I can break if it gives me a moment of pleasure. You are nothing. I am everything. Do you understand? She began to laugh and kissed me again. A shudder ran through me. Will you allow me to make a few conditions? I began. Conditions? She frowned. Ah, you are afraid already. Perhaps you even regret your decision, but it is too late. I have your oath and your word of honor. However, you may speak. First of all, I would like the two following points to be included in our contract. That you should never separate yourself from me completely, and that you should never abandon me to the mercy of any of your admirers. But Severin, exclaimed Wanda with tears in her eyes, how could you imagine? You, a man who loves me so, and who puts himself so totally in my power, that I could... No, I said, covering her hands with kisses. I cannot believe that you would dishonor me. Forgive me this despicable moment. Wanda smiled delightfully, put her cheek against mine, and seemed lost in thought. You have forgotten something, she whispered naughtily. The most important thing. A condition? Yes, that I should always appear in my furs, she exclaimed. But I promise you that I shall, if only because it makes me feel like a despo. I want to be very cruel with you. Do you understand? Shall I sign the contract? I asked. Not yet, said Wanda. I shall first add the conditions, and then you can sign in all due form. In Constantinople? No, I have thought things over. What is the point of having a slave in a country where slavery is common practice? I want to be the only one to own a slave. If we live in a cultivated, sensible, Philistine society, then you will belong to me, not by law, right, or power, but purely on account of my beauty and of my whole being. The idea is most exciting. But let us go to a country where we are not known, and where you can be my servant without embarrassment. Italy, perhaps, Rome or Naples. We were sitting on Wanda's ottoman. She wore her ermine-trimmed jacket, and her hair was loose and wild as a lion's mane. She clung to my lips, drawing my soul from my body. My head was spinning, my heart beating violently against hers. I want to place myself entirely in your hands, Wanda, I exclaimed suddenly, in a storm of passion that deprived me of all reason. Without conditions, with no limitations on your power over me, I want to be at the mercy of your every whim. On saying these words, I fell at her feet and gazed up at her, intoxicated. How handsome you are now, she exclaimed, with your eyes half closed in ecstasy. You enrapture me. How beautiful your gaze would be at the moment of expiring, after you had been beaten to death. You have the eyes of a martyr. I sometimes find it disturbing to be so totally at the mercy of a woman. With all the power in her hands, what if she were to take unfair advantage of my passion? I am now actually experiencing those things that have so preoccupied me from early childhood and have always filled me with such sweet fear. What senseless apprehension. She is playing a capricious game with me, no more. Of course she loves me, and she is so good, so noble, quite incapable of treachery. But everything rests in her hands. If she wants to betray me, she can. How exquisite is this agonizing doubt. Now I understand Manon Lescaut and the unhappy Chevalier, who even in the pillory still adored his faithless mistress. Love knows neither virtue nor merit. When we love, we forgive and forget everything, for we have no choice. It is not our judgment that leads us, It is not the qualities or faults that we discover in the loved one that inflame our passion or cause us to draw back in horror. We are driven by a gentle and mysterious power that deprives us of all will and reason, and we are swept along with no thought for the morrow. When we were in town today, a Russian prince made his first appearance on the promenade. His athletic body, his well-shaped features, and his splendid apparel aroused everyone's interest. The ladies in particular were all agape at the sight of this handsome wild animal, but the prince paid attention to no one and went his way with a sober air. He was accompanied by 2 servants, a Negro all dressed in red satin and a Turquesse in brilliant attire. Suddenly he noticed Wanda and fixed his cold, piercing eyes on her. He even turned around, and when she had passed he stood still and followed her with his gaze. As for Wanda, she devoured him with her gleaming green eyes and seemed ready to give anything in the world to see him again. I felt a lump in my throat as I watched the refined coquetry of her walk, the studied gracefulness of her movements as she turned to look at him. When we were home, I remarked on this. She frowned. "What of it?" she said. "The prince is a man who could be attractive to me. In fact, if I may say so, he fascinates me. After all, I am free to do as I please." "Do you no longer love me?" I asked in a trembling voice. "I love no one but you," she replied, "but I shall let the prince pay court to me." "Wanda!" "Are you not my slave?" she asked calmly. "Am I not Venus, cruel Venus, in the northern firs?" I was silent. I felt crushed by her words. Her cold stare pierced my heart like a dagger. "I want you to find out immediately what the prince's name is, where he lives, and everything you can learn about him. Do you understand?" "But—" "No objections, obey!" she cried, with a sternness of which I would never have thought her capable. "Do not let me see you again until you have an answer to all my questions." It was not until afternoon that I could bring Wanda the desired information. She made me stand before her like a servant, while she reclined in an armchair, listening with a smile. She then nodded, apparently satisfied. "Bring me my footstool," she ordered. I obeyed, and after placing it before her and resting her feet on it, I remained on my knees. "How will this end?" I asked despondently, after a brief silence. Wanda chuckled. "It hasn't begun yet." "You are even more heartless than I thought," I replied, wounded. "Severin," began Wanda earnestly, "I have done nothing yet, not the slightest thing, and you already call me heartless. What will happen when I fully satisfy your wishes and lead a carefree life, surrounded by a circle of admirers, when I fulfill your ideal and kick and whip you?" "You take my fantasies too seriously." "Too seriously. When I undertake something, there can be no question of jesting. You know that I detest all play acting and melodrama. Was it my idea or yours? Did I lead you into this, or is it you who aroused my imagination? At any rate, we are now in earnest." "Wanda," I replied tenderly, "be reasonable and listen to me. We have such enormous love for each other. We are so happy. Would you sacrifice all our future to a whim?" "This is no whim." "What is it then?" I asked fearfully. "Something that was already in me," she said thoughtfully. "It might never have seen the light of day had you not aroused and cultivated these tendencies. Now that it has become a powerful impulse, now that I am enjoying the situation intensely, you want to turn back. Tell me, are you a man?" "Dear sweet Wanda," I began to caress and kiss her. "Leave me alone. You are not a man." "And what are you?" I asked, flushing with anger. "I am selfish," she said. "You know that. I am not like you, strong in imagination and weak in action. When I make up my mind to do something, I carry it through. The more resistance I meet with, the more determined I become. Leave me alone." She pushed me away and rose to her feet. "Wanda," I replied with emotion, tears filling my eyes, "you do not know how much I love you." She pouted disdainfully. "You are mistaken," I continued. "You are making yourself out to be more evil than you really are. You are far too good, far too noble by nature." "What do you know about my nature?" she interrupted violently. "You will get to know me as I really am." "Wanda." "Make up your mind. Will you submit unconditionally?" And what if I refuse? Then? She came toward me, cold and ironic, and stood with her arms folded across her breast, that wicked smile on her lips. Here indeed was the despotic woman of my dreams. Her features were harsh, and I could read nothing in her eyes that promised kindness or mercy. Very well, she said at last. You are cruel, I said. You are going to whip me. Oh no, I shall let you go. You are free. I am not holding you. Wanda, I who love you so. Yes, you, sir, who worship me, she cried contemptuously. You who are also a coward, a liar, and a perjurer, get out of my sight. Wanda, you wretch. The blood rose to my head. I threw myself at her feet and burst into tears. More tears, she laughed. Oh, how dreadful that laugh was. Away with you. I never want to see you again. Oh my God, I cried, beside myself. I will do whatever you command. I will be your slave, your thing. You may treat me as you please, but do not reject me. I shall be lost. I cannot live without you. I embraced her knees and covered her hands with kisses. You must be a slave and taste the lash, for you are not a man, she said calmly. This is what hurt me most. She was neither angry nor even excited, but she spoke in an even voice. I know you now. I know your dog-like nature. You worship whoever tramples you underfoot, and the more you are abused, the more slavish your adoration. But you are only just about to discover me. She stalked up and down while I remained on my knees, my head bowed and my face flooded with tears. Come and see me, ordered Wanda, settling on the ottoman. I obeyed and came to sit next to her. She gave me a sober look. Then suddenly her eyes lit up with an inner glow, and she drew me to her breast and dried my tears with kisses. The comic side of my situation is that I can escape, but do not want to. I am ready to endure anything as soon as she threatens to set me free. If only she would take up the whip again. There is something uncanny in the way she treats me. I feel like a mouse held captive by a beautiful cat who plays with it daintily, and at any moment is ready to tear it to pieces. My mouse's heart beats so hard that it will break. What are her plans? What does she intend to do with me? She seems to have forgotten completely about the contract and my status of slave. Or was it only ever a whim? And did she give up her plans as soon as I no longer offered her any resistance and yielded to her imperious will? How kind she is to me at present, how tender and loving. Blissful days float by. Today she asked me to read her the scene in Faust where Mephistopheles appears as a wandering scholar. She seemed strangely satisfied and could not take her eyes off me. I do not understand, she said when I had finished, how a man can express such great and beautiful thoughts in such a clear way, so accurately and rationally, while being at the same time a romantic and a supersensualist. You enjoyed it? I asked, kissing her hand. She stroked my forehead affectionately. I love you, Severin, she murmured. I believe I could never love anyone more than you. Let us be reasonable, shall we? Instead of replying, I folded her in my arms. My heart was filled with deep love and passionate longing. My eyes became moist, and a tear fell on her hand. How can you cry? She exclaimed. What a child you are. While we were out driving today, we met the Russian prince. He looked disagreeably surprised to see me by Wanda's side, and looked as though he wanted to transpierce her with his magnetic green eyes. As for her, I could have knelt before her and kissed her feet. She did not appear to notice him, and let her gaze drift indifferently past him as though he were an object, a tree, for example. She then turned to me and smiled her adorable smile. Today, as I was saying good night to her, she seemed suddenly listless and distressed without reason. What could be preoccupying her? I am sorry to see you go, she began, as I stood on the threshold. It is entirely up to you to shorten my ordeal. Cease tormenting me, I implored. Do you think this constraint is not also a torture for me? She asked. Then bring it to an end, I said, embracing her. Be my wife. Never, Severin, she said gently, but with great firmness. What do you mean? I was stunned. You are not the husband for me. I looked at her, and slowly withdrawing my arm, which was still around her waist, I left the room. She uttered not a word to call me back. A sleepless night, during which I took numerous decisions, only to discard them one after another. In the morning I wrote her a letter declaring our relations at an end. My hands trembled as I wrote, and I burnt my fingers while sealing the letter. As I went upstairs to give it to the chambermaid, my knees threatened to give way. Suddenly the door opened, and Wanda appeared with her hair in curlers. "I have not yet arranged my hair," she said with a smile. "What have you there?" "A letter." "For me?" I nodded. "Aha, you want to break with me," she said ironically. "Did you not tell me yesterday that I was not the husband for you?" "I repeat it now." "Then—" I was shaking from head to foot, and my voice failed me. I handed her the letter. "Keep it," she said, eyeing me coldly. "You forget that it is no longer relevant whether you satisfy me as a husband or not. As a slave, you do well enough." "Madame," I gasped. "Yes, that is how you are to address me in future," answered Wanda, throwing back her head in a gesture of unutterable contempt. "Have your belongings ready within 24 hours. I am leaving tomorrow for Italy, and you will accompany me as my servant." "Wanda—" "I will not have any familiarity," she snapped. "What is more, you will have no right to visit me unless I call or ring for you, and you will not speak to me unless I address you first. From now on your name is no longer Severin, but Gregor." I was trembling with rage, but I cannot deny that I also felt a thrill of pleasure. "But, madame," I said anxiously, "surely you know my situation. I am still financially dependent on my father, and I am afraid that the large sum I shall require for such a journey—" "That means that you will have no money, Gregor," remarked Wanda delightedly. "So much the better. You will thus be completely dependent on me, and you will really be my slave." "You do not think," I objected feebly, "that as a man of honor I could possibly—" "I think," she replied imperiously, "that as a man of honor you should, above all, keep your word to follow me everywhere as my slave and obey all my commands. Now off with you, Gregor." I turned to go. "Not yet. You may kiss my hand first." She nonchalantly held out her hand to me, and I, pitiful amateur, fool, miserable slave, I pressed it with tenderness to my parched and burning lips. At last, with a kindly nod, she dismissed me. Late that evening, my lamp was still alight, and the fire still burning in the large green stove, for I had letters and documents to put in order, and autumn had descended upon us suddenly, as it so often does in our country. Suddenly she knocked on the window pane with the handle of her whip. I opened the window, and there she was, wearing her ermine-trimmed jacket and an ermine Cossack's toque, high and round, such as Catherine the Great liked to wear. "Are you ready, Gregor?" she asked in a stern voice. "Not yet, mistress." "I like that word. You will always call me mistress. Do you hear? We shall leave tomorrow at 9. Until we reach the main town, you will be friend and partner, but from the moment we board the train, you will be my slave and my servant. Now close the window and open the door." When I had carried out her orders and she had entered my room, she asked me with an ironic frown, "Well now, do you find me attractive?" "Wanda, you are—" "What impudence!" She dealt me a sharp blow with the whip. "Mistress, you are marvelously beautiful." Wanda smiled and seated herself in my armchair. "Kneel down here, beside my chair." I obeyed. "Kiss my hand." I grasped her cold little hand and kissed it. "And my mouth." In a frenzy of passion, I flung my arms around my lovely cruel mistress and covered her face, her mouth, her breasts with burning kisses, which she returned with equal fervor, her eyes closed as in a dream. It was past midnight when she left. At 9 o'clock sharp the next morning, as she had ordered, everything was ready for our departure. A comfortable carriage swept us away from the little Carpathian resort, the scene of the most interesting drama of my life, whose denouement no one could have foretold. All was still well. I was seated at Wanda's side, and she chatted to me amiably and wittily about Italy, the latest novel of Pszemski and Wagner's operas. She wore a kind of Amazon's traveling dress in black linen, with a short jacket of the same stuff bordered with dark fur. It fitted closely and displayed her slender figure to its best advantage. On her Grecian chignon rested a little fur hat trimmed with a black veil. Wanda was in excellent humor. She fed me sweetmeats, combed my hair, undid my necktie and retied it more becomingly, spread her furs over my knee so that she could press my hand in secret, and when our Jewish coachman was looking ahead, she even gave me a kiss. Her cold lips had the chilling fragrance of an autumnal rose blooming alone among bare trees and yellow leaves, as the first frosty mornings decorate its cowlings with diamonds of ice. We arrive in the main town and alight at the railway station. Wanda throws off her furs, tosses them into my arms with a charming smile, and goes to collect the tickets. When she returns, she is completely transformed. "Here is your ticket, Gregor," she says, like an arrogant lady talking to her servant. "A third-class ticket," I exclaim in comic horror. "Of course. Now make sure that you only get on the train once I am settled in my compartment and no longer need you. At each station you will hurry to my carriage to attend me. Do not forget. And now give me my furs." After I have submissively helped her with these, she drags me off to find a first-class carriage. Supporting herself on my shoulder, she jumps on, and I wrap her feet in bearskins and place them on a hot water bottle. She then dismisses me with a nod. I struggle into a third-class carriage filled with a nauseating smell of tobacco, the court of Hades shrouded in the midst of the Acheron, and I have the leisure to meditate on the riddle of human existence, and on the greatest riddle of all, woman. Whenever the train stops, I leap off, run to her carriage, and await her orders, cap in hand. Now she wants coffee, now a glass of water. At one time she asks for a light supper, at another a bowl of warm water to wash her hands, and so it goes on. She flirts with a number of gentlemen who have got into her compartment. I am dying of jealousy and have to leap around like an antelope to serve her quickly and not miss the train. In this way the night passes, without my being able to eat a mouthful or sleep a wink. I share the foul air reeking of onions with Polish peasants, Jewish merchants, and vulgar soldiers. When I climb up to her compartment, I find her comfortably stretched out among cushions and pelts, like an oriental princess, with the gentlemen sitting around her, bolt upright like Indian deities, hardly daring to breathe. She stays in Vienna for a day to buy a few things, in particular a new series of luxurious outfits. She still treats me like a servant, and makes me follow her at the respectful distance of 10 paces. She hands me her parcels without honoring me so much as a friendly glance, and leaves me to pant along behind her, loaded like a donkey. Before leaving, she takes all my clothes and makes a gift of them to the hotel porter. She then orders me to wear her livery, which is a Krakowian costume in her colors, light blue with red facings, and a red toque decorated with a peacock feather. The overall effect is not unbecoming. The silver buttons bear her coat of arms. I feel as though I have been sold or have pledged my soul to the devil. My lovely devil leads me from Vienna to Florence. Instead of Masurian peasants and greasy-haired Jews, my companions now consist of a flamboyant surgeon from the 1st Italian Grenadiers and a poor German painter. The tobacco smoke no longer smells of onions, but instead of sausages and cheese. Night falls again, and I lie on a wooden bench that feels like a rack and bruises my limbs cruelly. Yet my situation has a certain poetry about it. The surgeon has the face of the Apollo Belvedere, and the painter sings a lovely German ballad. The evening shadows gather fast, and one by one the stars appear. The perfume of strange longings pours forth into the night. Upon the sea of dreams, my lonely soul goes sailing, sailing without cease, in thy soul to come to rest. And I think of the divine creature peacefully sleeping a royal slumber in her soft furs. Florence, the irritating bustle, the shouts, the porters, the coaches. Wanda hails a carriage and dismisses our porter. "What do I have a servant for?" she says. "Gregor, here is the ticket. Go and get the luggage." She wraps herself in her furs and waits calmly in the carriage while I bring the heavy cases up one by one. Just as I am about to collapse under the weight of one of them, an obliging carabinier with a kind face comes to my rescue. She laughs. "It must be heavy," she says. "All my furs are in it." I climb up beside the coachman, mopping the sweat from my brow. A few minutes later, we draw up in front of a brightly lit doorway. "Have you any rooms?" she asks the footman. "Yes, madame." "Two for me and one for my servant, all with heating." "Two elegant rooms for you, madame, both with fireplaces, and one without heat for your servant." "Show me the rooms." She gives them a cursory look. "Good, I am satisfied. Have the fires lit at once. The servant can sleep in the unheated room." I give her a long, hard stare, which she ignores. "Bring up the cases, Gregor," she orders. "In the meantime, I shall change and go to the dining room. You may also eat something later." As she disappears into the adjoining room, I drag the cases upstairs and help the servant build a fire in her bedroom. He tries to question me in bad French about my mistress. For a moment, I gaze with mute envy at the crackling fire, the four-poster bed with its white, fragrant sheets, and the rugs that cover the floor. Tired and starving, I make my way downstairs and ask for something to eat. A friendly waiter who was once a soldier in the Austrian army and makes a great effort to talk to me in German leads me to the dining room and waits on me. For the first time in 36 hours, I have something fresh to drink and am just about to taste my first bite of warm food when she enters. I rise to my feet. "What do you mean by serving me in the same dining room as my servant?" she says to the waiter, quivering with rage, and she turns around and walks out. Meanwhile, I thank heaven for being able to at least eat undisturbed. I then climb the 4 flights of stairs to my room. My small traveling case is already there, and a dirty oil lamp lights the room, which is tiny, has no fireplace, and only a narrow vent for a window. If it were not so dreadfully cold, it would remind one of the Piombi of Venice. I burst out laughing in spite of myself, and the echo of my laugh startles me. Suddenly the door is flung open, and the servant exclaims with a theatrical gesture that could only be Italian, "Madame demands to see you." I pick up my toque, stumble down the steps that separate me from the first floor, and knock excitedly at her door. "Come in." I enter, close the door behind me, and stand to attention. Wanda has settled in comfortably. Wearing a white muslin and lace negligee, she is seated on a red velvet sofa, her feet resting on a cushion of the same stuff. Around her shoulders is the fur cloak she wore when she first appeared to me as the goddess of love. The yellow light of the candelabras, their reflections in the great mirror, and the red flames in the hearth cast a bewitching glow on the red velvet, the dark brown sable, the alabaster skin, and the fiery red hair of the lovely creature. She turns toward me and lets her cool green eyes rest upon me. "I am pleased with you, Gregor," she began. I bowed. "Come closer." I obeyed. Closer still. She lowered her eyes and stroked the fur with her fingers. "Venus in furs receives her slave. I can see that you are far more than an ordinary romantic. You do not fall short of your dreams. You become the man you imagine yourself to be, though it means nothing less than folly. I must admit that I am impressed by your behavior. It takes a certain strength, and one can only admire strength. I actually believe that in unusual circumstances, and in a more exalted age than this, what appears to be your weakness would reveal itself as impressive power. Under the first emperors, you would have been a martyr. At the time of the Reformation, an Anabaptist. During the French Revolution, you would have been one of those inspired Girondins who walked to the guillotine with the Marseillaise on their lips. But today you are my slave, my—" She suddenly leapt up, her fur sliding to the ground, and threw her arms around my neck with tender abandon. "My beloved slave, Severin! Oh, how I love you, how I adore you, how dashing you look in your Krakowian costume! But you are going to be cold tonight up there in your miserable room without a fire. Shall I give you one of my furs, dear heart, the large one there?" She promptly picked it up, threw it over my shoulders, and before I knew what had happened, I was completely wrapped up in it. Ah, how well fur becomes you. It brings out the true nobility of your features. When you are no longer my slave, you must wear a velvet coat with sable, do you hear? Or I shall never wear my velvet jacket again. She began to kiss and caress me, and drew me down beside her on the little sofa. "You seem very pleased with yourself in furs," she said. "Quick, give them back to me, or I shall lose all sense of dignity." I placed the fur cloak about her shoulders, and she slipped her right arm into the sleeve. This is the way they are worn in Titian's paintings. But enough joking. Do not look so miserable. You are making me sad. For the time being, you are my servant in the eyes of the world only. You have not yet signed the contract, and you are still free to leave me at any time. You have played your part to perfection. I am quite satisfied. But are you not tired of it? Do you not find me abominable? Come now, speak. I order you. Must I confess it to you, Wanda? I asked. Yes, you must. I am more in love with you than ever. Even if you abuse my devotion, I shall only adore you the more fanatically. The more you hurt me, as you have just done, the more you fire my heart and inflame my senses. I drew her to me and clung for a moment to her moist lips. Magnificent woman, I exclaimed, and in my ardor I tore the fur from her shoulders and pressed my mouth against her neck. So you only love me when I am cruel, said Wanda. Go away, you bore me, do you hear? And she slapped my face so hard that I saw stars and my ears hummed. Help me into my furs, slave. I helped her as best I could. How clumsy, she said, and slapped me again. I felt my cheeks grow pale. Did I hurt you? She asked, gently resting her hand on me. No, I said. In any case, you have no reason to complain. You wished it to be this way. Come, give me another kiss. I clasped her in my arms, and her lips drank from mine. As she lay pressed against my breast in her large heavy furs, a strange and painful sensation came over me, as though I were in the clutches of a wild animal, a she-bear. I almost felt her claws gradually sinking into my flesh. But this time the bear was merciful and let me go. My heart was full of joyful hopes as I climbed up to my servant's room and threw myself down on the hard bed. Life is very strange, I reflected. A moment ago, the most beautiful of women, Venus herself, was resting against your breast. Then suddenly you find yourself tasting at first hand the hell of the Chinese, a hell where the damned are not thrown to the flames, but chased out by devils into the icy plains. I should not be surprised if the founders of their religion slept in rooms without heating. I awoke during the night with a cry of terror. I had been dreaming that I was stranded on a field of ice. An Eskimo appeared on a sled drawn by reindeer. He had the face of the servant who had shown me to my unheated room. What are you looking for here, sir? He exclaimed. This is the North Pole. The next moment he had vanished, and Wanda was skating on the frozen surface, her white satin skirt billowing and flapping behind her. The ermine on her jacket and her toque, and her face especially, shone whiter than the snow. She came toward me, folded me in her arms, and kissed me. I felt a warm trickle of blood on my skin. What are you doing? I asked in horror. She laughed, and when I looked at her again, it was not Wanda, but a great white bear mauling my body with its claws. I cried out in desperation and awoke, but I could still hear her diabolical laughter. I looked about me, aghast. Early the next morning, I stood in readiness before Wanda's door, and when the servant brought up the coffee, I took it from him and served it to my lovely mistress. She had just made her toilette and was fresh and resplendent. She gave me a friendly smile and even called me back as I prepared to withdraw respectfully. Hurry and take your breakfast, Gregor, she said. We are leaving straight away to look for a house. It is dreadfully embarrassing here. When I chat with you at any length, people are thinking, the Russian woman is having an affair with her servant. The race of Catherine the Great is obviously not extinct. Half an hour later we were on our way, Wanda in her linen frock with her Russian toque, and I in my Krakowian costume. We made a sensation. I walked about 10 steps behind her and wore a sinister expression, trying hard to repress my laughter. There was not a single street where some attractive little house did not bear the sign, Camere Immobiliate. Wanda made me enter each of them, and only if the apartment seemed to suit her requirements did she come up herself. At noon, I was as tired as a hound after the hunt. We tried one house after another without finding a suitable place to stay. Wanda was beginning to lose her temper. Suddenly she said to me, Severin, the seriousness with which you are playing your role is very endearing, and I find the constraint we are imposing on ourselves deeply exciting. I can no longer bear it. I am too fond of you. I must have a kiss. Come into this house. But, madame, I objected. Gregor. She slipped into the nearest entrance, climbed a few steps of the dark stairway, threw her arms about me, and kissed me ardently. Ah, Severin, you are very clever. As a slave, you are much more dangerous than I expected. I find you irresistible. I am afraid of falling in love with you again. Then you no longer love me now? I asked, horror-stricken. She nodded with a serious air, but kissed me again with her firm and fragrant lips. We returned to the hotel where Wanda took luncheon and ordered me to eat something quickly. I was naturally not served as promptly as she was, and just as I was carrying the second mouthful of beefsteak to my mouth, the waiter appeared and exclaimed in his theatrical way, Madame wishes to see you immediately. I painfully took leave of my luncheon, and tired and hungry that I was, hurried to join Wanda, who was waiting in the street. "I would never have thought you could be so cruel, mistress," I said reproachfully, "to prevent me from eating in peace after such a tiring morning." Wanda gave a hearty laugh. "I thought you had finished," she said, "but what does it matter? Men are born to suffer, and you particularly so. Martyrs did not have beefsteak either." I followed her resentfully, hunger gnawing at my stomach. "I have given up the idea of living in town," she continued. "It is too difficult to find a whole floor to ourselves where we can live in privacy, and everything must be just so for such romantic and unusual relations as ours. I am going to rent a villa and, wait, this will surprise you. I shall allow you to eat now and take a little walk around Florence. I shall not be home till this evening. If I need you, I shall send for you." I visited the cathedral, the Palazzo Vecchio, the Loggia de Lanzi, and stood for a long while on the banks of the Arno. My gaze returned time and again to the ancient marvels of Florence. The domes and towers were delicately outlined against the cloudless sky. The yellow river churned under the wide arches of the splendid bridge, and around the town lay a circle of green hills dotted with slender cypresses, mansions, palaces, and cloisters. It was another world, joyful, sensuous, and laughing. Even the countryside had none of the sober melancholy of our landscapes. The hills were bathed in sunlight, and each little villa stood out in its whitewashed brilliance. The people here are less serious than we are. They think less, but they seem happier. They say it is easier to die in the South. I now know that there can be such a thing as a rose without a thorn, sensuality free from torment. Wanda discovered a charming little house which she has rented for the summer. It is perched on a pleasant hill on the left bank of the Arno, opposite the Cascine, and has a beautiful garden with a bower, a lawn, and a delightful alley bordered with camellias. It is built in the quadrangular Italian style and has 2 stories only. An open gallery runs along one side of the house, a sort of loggia with plaster casts of ancient statues. A few stone steps lead down into the garden. From the gallery one enters the bathroom, with a magnificent marble basin, and a spiral staircase leading up to my mistress's bedroom. Wanda is to occupy the first floor, and I have been assigned a room on the ground floor, which is very pleasant and even has a fireplace. I explored the garden and discovered a little temple built on a mound. It was locked, but on peering through a chink in the door, I beheld the goddess of love standing on a white pedestal. A shiver ran through me. She seemed to smile at me and say, "Is it you? I have been expecting you." Toward evening, a pretty little maid brought me orders to appear before my mistress. I climbed the wide marble stairs, passed through the antechamber, which is a large, extravagantly furnished drawing room, and knocked on the bedroom door. I knocked softly, intimidated by the luxury displayed around me. She did not hear me, and I was left standing in front of the door. For a moment I imagined that I was waiting before the great Catherine's bedroom, and that she was about to appear in a green morning dress with fur trimmings, the red ribbon of her order across her naked breasts, and her neat curls whitely powdered. I knocked again. Wanda flung the door open impatiently. "Why so late?" she asked. "I was standing in front of the door, but you did not hear me knock," I replied timidly. She closed the door, slipped her arm into mine, and led me to the red damask ottoman on which she had been reclining. The room was entirely furnished in red, the carpet, the curtains, the hangings, and the canopy above the bed. A fine painting showing Samson and Delilah decorated the ceiling. Wanda received me in captivating déshabillé, a white satin morning dress that molded her slender body and fell in graceful folds, and over her bare shoulders a green velvet jacket edged with fur. Her red mane, casually retained by a string of black pearls, tumbled down to her hips. "Venus in furs," I murmured, as she drew me to her breast and smothered me with kisses. I was speechless and even beyond thought, carried away in a storm of ecstasy. Wanda gently disengaged herself from my embrace and gazed at me, resting her head on her hand. I fell at her feet, and she drew me to her and played with my hair. "Do you still love me?" she asked, her eyes misty with gentle rapture. "How can you ask such a question?" "Do you remember your oath?" she continued, with a charming smile. "Now that all is ready and in order, I ask you once again, Are you in earnest? Do you really wish to be my slave?" "Am I not prepared for it?" I asked with surprise. "You have not signed the papers yet." "Papers? What papers?" "Ah, you see, you have forgotten already," she said. "Then let us drop the whole matter." "But Wanda," I said, "you know that nothing gives me greater bliss than to serve you and be your slave. I will give anything to be entirely at your mercy, to feel that my whole life lies in your hands." "How well enthusiasm becomes you," she murmured. "How handsome you are when you speak with such passion. Ah, I am more than ever in love with you, and yet I must be haughty, severe, and cruel toward you. I am afraid it will be impossible for me." "Have no fears," I said with a smile. "Where are the papers?" "Here." She pulled them out of her bodice, a little embarrassed, and handed them to me. "So that you will know what it feels like to be entirely in my hands, I have drafted another statement according to which you undertake to put an end to your life. Thus I can even kill you if it pleases me to do so." "Let me see." While I looked at the documents, Wanda went to fetch pen and ink. She then sat next to me, put her arm around my neck, and peered over my shoulder. The first document read as follows: Agreement between Mrs. Wanda von Donahue and Mr. Severin von Kuziemski. Mr. Severin von Kuziemski ceases from this date to be the fiancé of Mrs. Wanda von Donahue and renounces all rights pertaining to this state. In return, he undertakes, on his word as a man and a gentleman, to be the slave of this lady, until such time as she sets him at liberty. As the slave of Mrs. von Donahue, he will take the name of Gregor, and will undertake to satisfy all the wishes of his mistress, to obey all her orders, to submit to her, and to regard the slightest kindness on her part as an extraordinary favor. Mrs. von Donahue may not only chastise her slave for the slightest negligence or misdemeanor, as and when she wishes, but she will also have the right to maltreat him according to her humor, or even simply to amuse herself. She is also entitled to kill him if she so wishes. In short, he becomes her absolute property. Should Mrs. von Donahue ever set her slave at liberty, Mr. von Kuziemski agrees to forget everything he has experienced or undergone in his capacity as slave, and will not entertain, under any pretext or in any manner, the thought of vengeance or reprisal. In return, Mrs. von Donahue promises, in her capacity as his mistress, to appear as often as possible in furs, particularly when she is being cruel toward her slave. The contract bore today's date. The second document contained only a few words. Having been for many years weary of existence and the disappointments it brings, I have willfully ended my useless life. A profound horror gripped me on reading these lines. It was still possible to turn back, but I was carried away by the madness of passion and the sight of the lovely creature nestling languidly against my breast. "You must copy this one out, Severin," said Wanda, pointing to the second document. "It must be in your own hand. As for the contract, it will of course not be necessary." I quickly copied out the note confirming my suicide and handed it to Wanda. She read it over and laid it on the table with a smile. "Now are you brave enough to sign this one?" she asked, leaning her head to one side with a sweet smile. I took up the pen. "Let me sign first," said Wanda. "Your hand is shaking. Are you so afraid of happiness?" She snatched away the contract and the pen. In my hesitation, I gazed up for a moment, and only then did I realize the utter lack of historical character in the painting above me, as happens so often with painters of the Italian and Dutch schools. This gave it an uncanny quality. Delilah, an opulent creature with flaming red hair, reclines half-naked on a red ottoman, a sable cloak about her shoulders. She smiles and leans towards Samson, who has been bound and thrown at her feet by the Philistines. Her teasing, coquettish smile seems the very summit of cruelty. With half-closed eyes she gazes at Samson, while he regards her longingly, crazed with love. Already his enemy has laid a knee on his chest and is about to blind him with the white-hot sword. "That's that," said Wanda. "But you look quite lost. What is the matter?" "Everything will be as it was, even after you have signed. Surely you know me, dear heart." She had placed her bold signature to the contract. I looked once more into those eyes that held me in their bewitching power, and then took up the pen. "You are shaking," said Wanda calmly. "Shall I guide your hand?" She gently took hold of my hand, and my name appeared at the bottom of the contract. She read the 2 documents once more and placed them in the drawer of the table that stood by the ottoman. "Good. Now give me your passport and your money." I took out my pocketbook and handed it to her. She examined the contents, nodded, and put it away with the rest. I then knelt down before her in sweet rapture and laid my head on her breast. Suddenly she kicked me away, leapt up, and pulled the bell rope. 3 slender young negresses appeared, like ebony carvings, all dressed in red satin and each with a rope in her hand. Realizing my situation, I tried to rise, but Wanda turned her lovely cold face toward me, with its dark brows and mocking eyes, and confronted me in the stance of a domineering mistress. She signaled, and before I knew what was happening, the 3 negresses had thrown me to the ground, tied my hands and feet, and secured my arms behind me like a man about to be executed. I could hardly move an inch. "Give me the whip, Haidee," ordered Wanda, with chilling composure. The negress handed her mistress the whip on bended knee. "Take off my fur, it hinders me." The negress obeyed. "The jacket over there." Haidee promptly brought the ermine-trimmed casabeca from the bed, and Wanda slipped it on with her inimitable grace. "Tie him to the pillar here." The blackamoors lifted me, wound a stout rope around my body, and tied me upright to one of the massive pillars that held up the canopy of the big Italian bed. Then they vanished suddenly, as though the earth had swallowed them up. Wanda stepped forward briskly. Her white satin dress flowed behind her in a long silver train, like moonlight. Her hair flared like flames over the white fur of the jacket. Now she stood before me, her left hand on her hip, the whip in her right hand. She let out a peal of laughter. "The game is over," she said coldly. "Now we are in deadly earnest, you senseless fellow. I despise the blind fool who puts himself at the mercy of a vain and capricious woman. You are no longer my lover, but my slave. Your life and death are subject to my whims. You shall know me now. First of all, you shall taste the whip, seriously this time, and without having deserved it, so that you will know what awaits you if you are ever clumsy, disobedient, or rebellious." At these words, she turned back her ermine cuffs with a gesture both graceful and savage, and lashed me across the back. I shuddered as the whip cut into my flesh like a knife. "Well, how do you like that?" she exclaimed. I was silent. "You will see. I shall make you whimper like a dog beneath my lash," she said threateningly, and she began to whip me again. The blows fell thick and fast with dreadful force on my back, arms, and neck. I clenched my teeth not to cry out loud. Then she struck me full in the face. The warm blood began to run, but she laughed and continued to whip me. "I am only just beginning to understand you," she cried. "What a treat to have someone in one's power, especially a man who loves one. For you do love me, do you not? My pleasure grows with each blow. I shall tear you to shreds. Go on, writhe with pain, cry out, scream. You cannot arouse my pity." Finally, she seemed to grow tired. She dropped the whip, lay back on the ottoman, and rang the bell. The negresses entered. "Untie him." When they loosened the ropes, I fell to the ground like a log. The dusky creatures laughed, showing their white teeth. "Undo the rope around his feet." They did so, and I was able to rise. "Come and see me, Gregor." I approached my cruel, mocking beauty, who seemed more seductive than ever before. "One step nearer," ordered Wanda. "Kneel and kiss my foot." She held out her foot beneath the white satin hem, and like the supersensitive madman that I was, I pressed my lips to it. "You will not see me for a whole month, Gregor," she said solemnly. "I must become a stranger to you, so that our new relations may be easier for you to accept. You will work in the garden and await further orders. Away, slave." A month has gone by in the grey monotony of hard labor, in wistful longing and ardent desire to see her, she who is the source of all my sorrow. I have been put under the gardener's orders and must help him prune the trees and clip the hedges, transplant the flowers, weed the flower beds, and rake the gravel paths. I share his frugal meals and his hard bed. I rise with the cock crow and retire when the chickens do. Meanwhile, I hear that our mistress is leading a gay life, surrounded by admirers. Once I even heard the sound of her playful laughter. I feel exceedingly stupid. and wonder whether this is due to the life I am leading or whether I have always been so. The day after tomorrow, the month will end. What will she do with me? Perhaps she has forgotten me, and I shall spend the rest of my days clipping hedges and picking bouquets until a merciful end delivers me. A written order arrives. The slave Gregor is hereby recalled to my personal service. W.D. The next morning, with beating heart, I drew back the damask curtains and entered my goddess's bedroom, which still lay in half darkness. "Is that you, Gregor?" she asked, as I knelt before the hearth and prepared to build the fire. I started at the sound of my beloved's voice. I could not see her. She was lying behind the curtains of the four-poster bed. "Yes, madame." "What time is it?" "Past 9 o'clock." "My breakfast." I hurried to fetch it and knelt before her bed with the coffee tray. "Here is your breakfast, mistress." Wanda drew back the curtains, and, curiously enough, as I saw her lying there among the pillows, her hair streaming over her shoulders, she seemed a perfect stranger. A beautiful woman, nothing more. These were not the beloved features, but a hard face with an expression of weariness and satiety that I found deeply disturbing. Or had I simply not noticed these traits before? She stared at me with her green eyes that were curious rather than threatening or compassionate, and lazily pulled the dark fur in which she had been lying over her bare shoulders. At that moment she was so charming, so bewitching, that I felt the blood rush to my head, and the tray began to rattle in my hands. She noticed this, and picked up the whip which lay on her bedside table. "You are clumsy slave," she said crossly. I lowered my eyes and tried to hold the tray as steady as possible. She took her breakfast, yawned, and stretched her voluptuous limbs in the magnificent fur. "She has rung. I enter. Take this letter to Prince Corsini." I hurry into town, hand the letter to the prince, a handsome young man with gleaming black eyes, and consumed with jealousy, bring the answer to my mistress. "What is the matter?" she asks, giving me a sly look. "You are quite pale." "Nothing, mistress. I merely ran rather fast." At lunch the prince is at her side, and I am condemned to wait on them. They exchange jokes and ignore me totally. As I am pouring out the Bordeaux, a dizzy spell comes over me. The wine spills over the tablecloth and onto my mistress's gown. "How clumsy!" cries Wanda, and she slaps my face. The blood rushes to my head, and they both laugh heartily. After luncheon, she goes to the Cascine. She herself drives a little carriage drawn by elegant bay horses from England. I am seated behind her and watch her acknowledging each gentleman's greeting with a flirtatious glance. As I help her down from her carriage, she leans lightly on my arm. Her touch runs through me like an electric shock. Alas, she is truly a wonderful woman, and I love her more than ever. At 6 o'clock, a small circle of ladies and gentlemen are gathered for dinner. I am waiting at table, and this time I do not spill wine on the tablecloth. A slap in the face is more effective than 10 lectures, especially if it is delivered by the dimpled hand of a lady. After dinner, she sets out for the Pergola Theatre. As she descends the stairs in her black velvet gown with its wide ermine collar, a diadem of white roses in her hair, the effect is breathtaking. I open the carriage door and help her in. When we reach the theater, I leap down from my seat to assist her, and as she rests lightly on my arm, I tremble under the sweet burden. I escort her to her box and take up my place in the corridor. The performance lasts 4 hours, during which time she receives continuous visits from her admirers, while I clench my teeth with rage. It is long past midnight when my mistress rings for the last time. "Light the fire," she orders briefly, and when the flames are crackling in the fireplace, "Some tea." When I return with the samovar, she has already undressed, and with the aid of the negress she slips into her white nightgown. Haiti withdraws. "Give me my furs," says Wanda, languidly stretching her beautiful limbs. I take the furs off the armchair and hand them to her, and she slowly and lazily slips them on. Then she sinks into the cushions on the ottoman. Take off my shoes and put on my velvet slippers. I kneel and try to pull off the dainty shoe, without success. "Quick," cries Wanda, "you are hurting me." "Wait a minute, I shall train you." And she deals me a blow with the whip. I finally succeed. Now away with you. Another kick, and I am allowed to go to bed. Today I accompanied her to a soiree. In the hall, she ordered me to help her off with her furs, and then sailed into the brilliantly lit room with a proud smile, confident of her success. Hour after hour went by, and I remained alone with my gloomy thoughts, occasionally catching a strain of music through the half-open doors. Some of the footmen tried to start a conversation with me, but since I know only a few words of Italian, they soon lost interest. Finally, I fell asleep and dreamed that in a fit of jealous rage I had killed Wanda and was sentenced to death. I saw myself on the scaffold. I felt the blade fall, but I was still alive. Then the executioner slapped me in the face. But it was no executioner. It was Wanda who stood before me in a fury, demanding her furs. I immediately came to my senses and assisted her. What a delicious sensation to help a magnificent creature into her furs, to feel the nape of her neck and her superb arms slip into the precious fleece, to lift her rippling curls and replace them on the collar. And what delight when she throws off the fur and it retains the gentle warmth and faint perfume of her body. It makes one swoon. At last, a day without guests, theater, or other company. I breathe again. Wanda sits on the balcony reading and appears to have no orders to give me. As the silvery mist of evening retreats and twilight falls, she dines and I wait on her. Although she is eating alone, she has not a glance, not a word for me, not even a slap in the face. Ah, how I pine for just one blow from her hand. The tears rise to my eyes. I feel that I have been humiliated so deeply that I am no longer even worth torturing. Before retiring, she rings for me. Tonight you will sleep in my room. I had horrible dreams last night, and I am afraid of being alone. Take some cushions from the ottoman and come and lie with me on the bearskin at my feet. With this, she puts out the lights, leaving only a small lamp burning, and climbs into bed. Do not move, so as not to wake me. I do as she orders, but cannot fall asleep for a long time. Like a goddess, she lies wrapped in furs, her arms folded behind her neck, her hair scattered over the pillow. Her magnificent bosom heaves peacefully. When she makes the slightest stir, I awake and listen in case she should need me. But she has no need of me. My only function is to be there. I mean no more to her than the light of a night lamp or a weapon kept by the side of the bed. Am I mad, or is she? Has all this sprung from the vain fancy, the inventive brain of a woman whose aim is to surpass my supersensual imagination? Or is she really a Nero, and does she take a fiendish pleasure in trampling on a man who has thoughts, feelings, and a will like hers, as though he were no more than a worm? As I knelt before her bed with the coffee tray, Wanda suddenly laid her hand on my shoulder and gazed into the depths of my eyes. "What beautiful eyes you have," she said gently, "especially now that you are suffering. Can you still love me?" And she drew me to her with such violence that the crockery went flying and the coffee ran over the carpet. "Wanda, my Wanda," I cried, embracing her ardently and covering her mouth, her face, and her breast with kisses. "This is the sum of my misery. The worse you treat me, the more you betray me, the more passionately I love you. Oh, I shall die of pain and love and jealousy." "But I have not betrayed you yet, Severin," replied Wanda with a smile. "Have you not? Wanda, for the love of God, do not taunt me so mercilessly," I cried. "Did I not deliver the letter to the prince myself?" "Certainly, it was an invitation to lunch on." "Since we have been in Florence, you have—" "I have remained entirely faithful to you," retorted Wanda. "I swear by all that is holy to me. I have done all this merely to be agreeable to you, to fulfill your dreams. But now I shall find myself a lover, or I should only be doing things by halves, and you would eventually reproach me for not having been cruel enough. My dear beautiful slave. However, today you shall be Severin again, none other than my beloved. I have kept your clothes. You will find them in that chest. Dress as you were in the Carpathian resort where we loved each other so ardently. Forget everything that has happened since then. Oh, you will soon forget in my arms. I shall kiss away all your sorrows." She began to stroke me like a child, to kiss and caress me. Finally she said with a sweet smile, "Go and get ready now. I shall dress also. Shall I wear my fur jacket? Oh yes, of course. Go quickly now." When I returned, she was standing in the middle of the room, wearing her white satin dress and her red casabeka lined with ermine. Her hair was powdered, and she wore a small jeweled diadem. For a moment she reminded me in an uncanny way of Catherine II, but she gave me no time to think and drew me down beside her on the sofa. We spent 2 heavenly hours together. She was no longer a stern and capricious mistress, but an elegant lady, a tender sweetheart. She showed me photographs and books that had just been published, and she talked to me with such verve, lucidity, and good taste that more than once I carried her hand to my lips, enraptured. She then had me read some poems of Lermontov, and at the height of my excitement, she tenderly laid her little hand on mine and asked me, her eyes suffused with languor, "Are you happy now?" "Not yet." She lay back on the cushions and slowly opened her casabeka, but I promptly drew back the ermine over her half-naked bosom. "You are driving me insane." "Come to me." I fell into her arms. Her kisses were like a serpent's. She whispered once again, "Are you happy?" "Infinitely," I cried. She burst out laughing, and her laughter had such an evil ring that it sent a cold shiver down my back. "You dreamed of being the slave and the plaything of a beautiful woman, and now you imagine you are a free man. You think you are my lover, you insane fellow. I need only make one move and you become a slave again. Down on your knees." I fell at her feet, my hesitant eyes still fixed upon her. "You cannot believe it." She looked at me with her arms folded across her breast. "I am bored, and all you are good for is to amuse me a while. Do not look at me in that way." She kicked me. "You are whatever I want you to be, a man, a thing, an animal." She rang. The black girls appeared. "Tie his arms behind his back." I remained on my knees and let them tie me up. They led me to the vineyard that lay along the south side of the garden. Maize had been planted between the vines, and a few dry heads were still standing. A plow had been left there. The blackamoors tied me to a stake and amused themselves by pricking me with golden hairpins. But this did not last long, for Wanda appeared with her ermine toque, her hands in the pockets of her jacket. She told them to untie me and fasten my hands behind my back. Then she had a yoke laid on my shoulders, and I was harnessed to the plow. The black demons pushed me onto the field. One drove the plow, the other led me on a leash, and the third goaded me with a whip, while Venus in fur stood by, watching the scene. The following day, as I was waiting on her at dinner, Wanda said to me, "Lay another place, I want you to eat with me today." And as I was about to sit down opposite her, no, next to me, close to my side. She was in excellent humor. She gave me soup from her spoon, fed me with her fork, laid her head on the table like a playful kitten, and flirted with me. To my misfortune, I paid a little more attention than I should have done to Haidee, who was serving the meal in my place. For the first time I noticed her noble, almost European features, her statuesque bust that seemed chiseled in black marble. The lovely demon noticed that she was attractive to me and gave me a broad smile that revealed her dazzling teeth. No sooner had she left the room than Wanda flew into a rage. "What? You dare look at another woman in my presence? She ought to suit you better than I. She is even more diabolical." I was terrified. I have never seen Wanda like this before. Her face and even her lips grew as white as a sheet, and her whole body shook. Venus in furs, jealous of her slave. She tore the whip from its hook and lashed me full in the face. Then she called the black servant girls and ordered me to be tied up and dragged to the cellar, where they flung me into a dark vault, a veritable prison cell. The door closed behind me, the bolt was shot, and the key ground in the lock. I was buried alive. I do not know how long I have been lying on this pile of dank straw, like a calf waiting for the slaughter, without light, food, or drink, and unable to sleep. She has everything she needs, but she is letting me die of hunger, if I do not freeze to death before then. I am shivering with cold, or is it fever? I believe I am beginning to hate her. A blood-red streak of light falls across the floor. Someone is opening the door. Wanda appears on the threshold, wrapped in furs, a lighted torch in her hand. "Are you still alive?" she asks. In a trice she is by my side. She kneels down and takes my head in her lap. "Are you ill? Your eyes shine so. Do you love me? I want you to love me." She draws a little dagger, and at the glint of its blade I am seized with terror, convinced that she is about to kill me. But she laughs and cuts the ropes that bind me. Every evening after dinner she sends for me. She demands that I read to her and then discuss various topics of interest. She seems completely transformed, as though she were ashamed of her savage behavior and of the severity with which she has treated me. A touching gentleness transfigures her whole being, and when she holds out her hand to bid me goodbye, her eyes shine with the saintly light of goodness and love that touches one to tears and wipes away all the miseries of existence and all the terrors of death. I am reading her Manon Lescaut. She sees the association but does not refer to it, and merely smiles from time to time. Finally she closes the little book. "Do you not want me to read any further, madame?" "Not today. I have decided to act the story of Manon in real life. I have a rendezvous at the Casquine, and you, my dear chevalier, are to accompany me. You will, of course." "I obey all your commands." "I am not commanding you, but asking you," she said with irresistible charm. She rose, put her hand on my shoulder, and looked at me. "Those eyes," she exclaimed. "I love you, Severin. You have no idea how much I love you." "Yes, I have," I replied bitterly. "You love me so much that you're going to a rendezvous with another man." "I do this only to arouse your passion," she replied. "I am obliged to take admirers so as not to lose you. I do not ever want to lose you, do you hear? For I love you, and you alone." She clung passionately to my lips. "If only I could give you all my soul in this kiss. But come now." She slipped into a simple black velvet coat and wrapped her head in a dark bashlik. She then walked rapidly down the gallery and entered the carriage. "Gregor will drive," she called out to the coachman, who withdrew with a surprised look. I climbed into the driver's seat and began to whip the horses furiously. When we reached the Cascine, Wanda alighted at the point where the broad alley narrows to a corridor of lush foliage. It was dark, and a sprinkling of stars shone through the overcast sky. On the banks of the Arno, a man stood watching the muddy waves. He wore a dark cloak that gave him the air of a brigand. Wanda quickly made her way through the shrubbery and tapped him on the shoulder. I can still see him turn toward her and take her hand. Then they both disappeared behind the leafy wall. A whole hour of torment. Finally, I heard the rustle of leaves and they reappeared. He accompanied her back to the carriage. The lantern revealed an incredibly young face that I had not seen before, with a gentle and melancholy expression. The bright light played upon his golden ringlets. She held out her hand, which he kissed with deep respect. Then she signaled to me, and in a trice the carriage was speeding past the long line of trees that border the river like a green tapestry. The bell rings at the garden gate. It is a face I know, the man from the Cascine. "Whom shall I announce?" I ask in French. He shakes his head, embarrassed. "Do you understand a little German?" "Of course, I was asking your name." "Alas, I have none yet," he replied, ill at ease. "Tell your mistress that the German painter from the Cascine is here, and that he would like to ask her. But here she is." Wanda appeared on the balcony and greeted the stranger. "Gregor, show the gentleman to my apartment," she ordered. I pointed the way. "Please do not bother. I shall find it now. Thank you very much." So saying, he bounded upstairs. I remained below, watching the poor German with a deep feeling of pity. Venus in furs has trapped his soul in her red curls. He will paint her and lose his reason. A sunny winter's day. A golden haze trembles over the leaves of the trees and over the green carpet of the meadow. Below the balcony, jewel-like camellias are bursting into flower. Wanda is sitting in the loggia, drawing. The German stands opposite her, his hands clasped in adoration, looking, or rather gazing ecstatically at her face, utterly captivated by the vision before him. But she ignores him. She has no eyes for me either as, spade in hand, I turn over the soil in the flower beds, so that I may see her and feel her presence that acts upon me like music, like poetry. The painter has left. It is extremely daring of me, but I take the plunge. I make my way up to the gallery, draw near to Wanda, and ask, "Do you love the painter, mistress?" "I pity him," she answered, "but I do not love him. I love no one. I have loved you as ardently, as passionately, as deeply as I shall ever love, but it is no longer true at present. My heart is empty and dead, and it makes me very sad." "Wanda!" I cried in painful surprise. "Soon you will not love me either," she went on. "Tell me when it has happened, and I shall give you back your freedom." "I shall remain your slave all my life, for I adore you and always shall," I cried, seized again by the frenzied passion that had repeatedly been so fatal to me. Wanda looked at me with an oddly satisfied air. "Consider this well," she said. "I have loved you infinitely, and I have treated you tyrannically to gratify your desires. There are still some traces of the tender feelings that once found their echo in your heart, but when they too have disappeared, who knows whether I shall still want to free you? I could well become a monster of cruelty, and have no other desire but to torment and torture you, to watch the man who adores me die of love, while I remain indifferent or even love another. Consider this well." "I have thought about it for a long time," I answered, burning with fever. "I cannot exist without you. I shall die if you set me free. Let me be your slave. Kill me, but do not turn me away." "Very well then, be my slave. Only remember that I no longer love you, and that consequently your love means no more to me than the attachment of a dog to its mistress. And dogs are meant to be kicked." Today I went to see the Venus de Medici. It was early yet, and the small octagonal chamber in the tribuna was like a shadowy sanctuary. I stood in deep meditation, my hands clasped before the silent image of the goddess. But I did not stay long in this position. There was no one in the gallery, not even an Englishman, and I knelt down before the statue. I gazed up at the maiden's sweet, lissom body, at her full breasts, her voluptuous face with its half-closed eyes, and the perfumed curls on either side of her head that seemed to conceal tiny horns. My mistress's bell. It was noon, but she was still in bed, with her arms folded behind her head. "I am going to bathe," she said, "and you shall attend me. Lock the door." I obeyed. "Now go downstairs and make sure that everything is properly locked there as well." As I descended the spiral staircase leading from her bedroom to the bath, my knees shook and I had to steady myself by clutching the banister. After checking that the garden door was locked, I returned. Wanda was now seated on the bed, her hair undone, in her great velvet jacket edged with fur. A sudden movement revealed to me that she had nothing on but her jacket, and I was inexplicably afraid. I felt like a condemned man who knows he must go to the scaffold and yet begins to tremble on seeing it. "Come, Gregor, take me in your arms." "What did you say, mistress?" "You're to carry me. Do you understand?" I lifted her. She put her arms about my neck, and I slowly descended the stairs. Her hair brushed my cheek from time to time, and her foot rested gently against my knee. I trembled under my lovely burden and thought I might fall at any moment. The bathroom was a spacious rotunda, softly lit from a red glass dome in the ceiling. 2 palm trees spread their broad leaves in a roof of green above the red velvet couch, and a few red-carpeted steps led down to the wide marble bath in the center. "There is a green ribbon on my bedside table," said Wanda as I laid her on the couch. "Bring it to me, and also bring the whip." I flew upstairs and down again, and, kneeling before my sovereign lady, presented the 2 objects to her. She made me tie her heavy hair charged with electricity into a large chignon, which I fastened with the velvet ribbon. I then had to prepare her bath, and this I did very clumsily, for my hands and feet refused to obey me. From time to time, I felt compelled to glance at my beauty, as though some magical force were driving me. At the sight of her lying on the red velvet cushions, her precious body peeping out between the folds of sable, I realized how powerfully sensuality and lust are aroused by flesh that is only partly revealed. My feelings grew stronger still when the bath was filled and Wanda, in one sweep, threw off her fur wrap and appeared to me like the goddess of the tribuna. At that moment she seemed as saintly and chaste in her unveiled beauty as the statue of the goddess, and I fell on my knees before her and devoutly pressed my lips to her foot. My soul, that had been rocked a while ago by such a storm of emotion, was now suddenly pacified. There was not a trace of cruelty about her. She slowly walked down the steps. I was able to contemplate her in peaceful joy, untouched by a single atom of suffering or desire. Her body gleamed through the crystal-clear water, and the waves she produced lapped lovingly around her. How right is the nihilist aesthete when he says that a real apple is more beautiful than a painted apple, and a living body than a Venus of stone. A silent rapture overcame my whole being when she rose from the bath, the drops of silvery water and the pink light streaming down her. I wrapped the linen towel around her to dry her wonderful body, and the same peaceful bliss remained with me as she rested her foot upon me as on a footstool, and lay back on the cushions in her great velvet cloak. The supple furs greedily caressed her cold marble body. Her left arm, on which she supported herself, lay like a sleeping swan amid the dark sable, while her right hand toyed with the whip. My eyes alighted by chance on the massive mirror that hung opposite, and I let out a cry. Our reflections in its golden frame were like a picture of extraordinary beauty. It was so strange and fantastic that I felt a deep pang of regret that its forms and colors would soon vanish like a cloud. "What is it?" asked Wanda. I pointed to the mirror. "Ah, yes, it is beautiful," she said. "What a pity we cannot capture this moment." "Why not?" I asked. "Would not the most famous painter be proud if you allowed him to immortalize you? I shudder to think that this extraordinary beauty, these mysterious green eyes and wild fiery hair, and all the splendor of this body should be lost forever. It fills me with the terror of death and nothingness. But the artist's hand must save you from this. You must not, like the rest of us, vanish irrevocably without leaving any trace of your existence. Your image must survive long after you have turned to dust. Your beauty must triumph over death." Wanda smiled. "What a pity there is no Titian or Raphael in Italy today," she said. "However, love can be a substitute for genius. Who knows, perhaps our little German," she mused. "Yes, he must paint me, and I shall ensure that love mixes the colors on his palette." The young painter has set up a studio in the villa. She has captured him in her net. He has just begun a Madonna with red hair and green eyes. Only the idealism of a German could make a virginal portrait of such a woman. The poor fellow is almost a bigger donkey than I, and our misfortune is that Titiana has too soon discovered our ass's ears. Now she is making fun of us, and how she laughs! I can hear the sounds of her mirth coming from the studio as I stand under her open window, waiting. "Is it I? I cannot believe it. You must be mad to paint me as a Madonna." She bursts out laughing again. "Wait a moment. I want to show you a portrait of me, one that I painted myself. You shall copy it." Her head appears in the window, her hair fiery in the sunlight. "Gregor!" I rush up the stairs, through the gallery, and into the studio. "Take him to the bathroom," orders Wanda, and she disappears. We enter the rotunda and lock the door from the inside. A few moments later, Wanda arrives, dressed only in her furs, with the whip in her hand. She descends the stairs and stretches out on the velvet cushions as she had done before. I lie down in front of her, and she places one of her feet on me, while her right hand plays with the whip. "Look at me," she says, "with your deep, fanatical look. There, that is right." The painter turns dreadfully pale. He devours the scene with his beautiful, melancholy eyes. His lips open, but he remains silent. "Well, how do you like this picture?" "Yes, that is how I shall paint you," says the German. But one could hardly say that he spoke. It was more like the moan of a soul sick unto death. The charcoal drawing is finished. The head and bust are sketched in. Already her diabolical face appears in a few bold lines, and light flickers in her green eyes. Wanda stands before the canvas with folded arms. This painting, like many of the Venetian school, is intended to be both a portrait and a story, declares the painter, still deathly pale. "And you will call it?" she asks. "But what is the matter? Are you ill?" "I am afraid he begins, darting a hungry glance at the lovely woman in furs. "But let us talk about the painting. I imagine that the goddess of love has come down from Olympus to visit a mortal. So as not to die of cold in this modern world of ours, she wraps her sublime body in great heavy furs and warms her feet on the prostrate body of her lover. I imagine the favorite of this beautiful despot, who is whipped when his mistress grows tired of kissing him, and whose love only grows more intense the more he is trampled underfoot. I shall call the picture Venus in Furs." The painter works slowly, but his passion is fast increasing. I am afraid he will end up by killing himself. She teases him with riddles that he cannot solve, and taunts him until he is driven to distraction. During the sitting, she sucks sweetmeats and rolls the wrappers into pellets, which she flicks at him. "I am glad you are in such high spirits, madame," says the painter, "but your face has completely lost the expression I need for my painting." "The expression you need for your painting," she smiles. "Wait a moment." She rises to her feet and deals me a blow with the whip. The painter gapes in childish wonder, half horrified and half admiring. As she whips me, Wanda's face gradually recovers the cruel, ironic appearance that fills me with such rapture. "Is this the right expression for your portrait?" she asks. The painter is dumbfounded. He lowers his eyes to evade her piercing stare. "That is the right expression," he stammers, "but I can no longer paint." "What is the matter?" asks Wanda mockingly. "Can I be of any assistance?" "Yes," cries the German, as though taken with madness. "Whip me too." "With pleasure," she replies, shrugging her shoulders. "But if I am to whip you, I must do it properly." "Whip me to death," cries the painter. "Will you let me tie you up?" she asks with a smile. "Yes," he sighs. Wanda leaves the room for a moment and returns with a length of rope. "Well now, are you brave enough to put yourself at the mercy of Venus in Furs, the beautiful despot?" she taunts. "Tie me up," replies the painter with the voice of a dying man. Wanda ties his hands behind his back, winds a rope around his arms and another around his body, and attaches him to the bars of the window. She then throws off her furs, picks up the whip, and stalks to him. The scene holds an awesome fascination. I feel my heart beat as she laughingly steps back to deal the first blow. The whip hisses through the air, and he starts slightly as he feels its bite. Then she begins to whip him without stopping, her mouth half open, her teeth gleaming between her red lips, until the pitiful blue eyes beg for mercy. It is indescribable. She now poses alone for him. He is working on her head. She has stationed me in the adjoining room, behind the heavy dividing curtain, where I can see everything without being seen. But what is she up to? Is she afraid of him? She has driven him mad enough. Or is this meant to be a new torture for me? My knees shake at the thought. They are talking to one another. He is speaking in such a low voice that I cannot hear a thing, and she replies in the same tone. What does all this mean? Is there some secret understanding between them? I am suffering horribly, and my heart threatens to leap from my breast. Now he is kneeling before her. He embraces her and leans his head against hers, and she, the cruel woman, laughs, and I hear her exclaim, "Aha, you need the whip again." "Woman, goddess, is there no love in your heart?" cries the German. "Do you not know what it is to love, to be consumed with longing and passion? Can you not imagine what I suffer? Have you no pity for me?" "No," she replies contemptuously, "but I have the whip." She draws it deftly out of the pocket of her fur jacket and lashes him full in the face. He rises and staggers back. "Can you paint now?" she asks indifferently. He does not answer, but takes his place again before the easel. The picture is very successful. It is a good likeness, but it seems idealized because of the bright, supernatural, even diabolical colors. The painter has put into his work all his distress, his adoration, and his wretchedness. Now he is painting me. We spend a few hours alone together each day. Today he turned to me suddenly and asked in a voice trembling with emotion, "Do you love her?" "Yes, I love her also." His eyes were filled with tears. He was silent for a moment and turned back to the canvas. "We have a mountain in Germany where she dwells," he murmured as though to himself. "That woman is a demon." When the painting was finished, Wanda offered him a regal sum for his work. "Oh, but you have paid me already," he said with a pained smile. Before leaving, he opened his portfolio with a mysterious air and allowed me to peep inside. It was a shock to see her face staring at me, as live as a reflection in a mirror. "I am keeping that one," he said. "It is mine. She cannot take it away from me. I have earned it dearly enough." "I really feel sorry for that poor painter," said Wanda today. "It is absurd to be as virtuous as I am, do you not think?" I dared not reply. "Oh, I forgot that I was speaking to a slave. I must go out. I want to be distracted, to forget. Quick, my carriage." Another fabulous outfit. Russian boots of mauve velvet lined with ermine, a dress of the same stuff gathered by narrow bands of fur, a short jacket matching the rest, tight-fitting and also lined with ermine. She wears a tall ermine toque in the style of Catherine the Great, with a plume fastened by a diamond clip, and her red hair lies loose over her back. Thus she climbs onto the driver's seat, and I take my place behind her. How she whips the horses! The team flies at breakneck speed. Today she seems to want to attract attention at all costs, and fully succeeds. She is the lioness of the Cascine. People greet her from their carriages. They gather in groups to discuss her, but she ignores them all, and merely acknowledges the greetings of the older gentlemen with a nod. Suddenly, a young man appears on a prancing black horse. As soon as he sees Wanda, he slows his mount to a walk and stops to let her go by. Their eyes meet. The lioness beholds the lion. As she passes before him, she is so drawn by the magnetic power of his eyes that she turns to look after him. My heart stands still at the look of amazement and rapture that she casts over him like a net. He deserves it, however. What a beautiful man, by God! I have never seen his like in the flesh, only his marble replica in the Belvedere. He has the same slender, steely musculature, the delicate features, the wavy locks, and the feature that makes him so distinctive. He has no beard. If his hips were less slender, he could be taken for a woman in disguise. But the strange expression of the mouth, the leonine muzzle, and the bared teeth lend a fleeting cruelty to his magnificent face. Apollo flaying Marsyas. He wears high black boots, closely fitting breeches of white leather, and a black linen jacket in the style of Italian cavalry officers, trimmed with astrakhan and rich braid. On his dark curls, a red fez. I cannot remain indifferent to his erotic power, and my heart is filled with admiration for Socrates, who had the strength to resist the seductive Alcibiades. I have never before seen my lioness so excited. Her cheeks burned as she jumped down from the carriage and hurried up the villa steps, ordering me to follow her. Pacing up and down her room, she said with disturbing eagerness, "You must find out immediately about the man we saw in the Cascine. Oh, what a man! Did you see him? What do you think of him? Speak!" "The man is handsome," I replied in a dull voice. "He is so handsome." She paused and steadied herself on the back of the chair, that he quite took my breath away. "I can understand the impression he made on you," I answered. I, too, was swept off my feet. In fact, I formed the wild fantasy that this man was my lover and that he whipped you, to your great delight," she said, bursting into laughter. "Off with you now, go." Before nightfall, I had the required information. When I returned, Wanda was still wearing her magnificent attire, but she was lying on the ottoman, her face buried in her hands, her hair disheveled like a lion's mane. "What is his name?" she asked in a strangely calm voice. "Alexis Papadopoulos." "A Greek?" I nodded. "Is he very young?" "Scarcely older than you. They say he was educated in Paris and that he is an atheist. He fought the Turks at Candia and is said to have distinguished himself no less by his race hatred and cruelty than by his bravery. A man, in fact, she exclaimed, her eyes gleaming. He is living in Florence at present, I went on. They say he is fabulously rich. I did not ask you about that, she interrupted. This man is dangerous. Are you not afraid of him? I am. Has he a wife? No. A mistress? Neither. What theater does he frequent? Tonight he will be going to the Niccolini Theater, where the talented Virginia Marini is appearing with Salvini, the greatest living actor in Italy and perhaps in Europe. Do what you can to get a box, quickly, she ordered. But mistress, do you want a taste of the whip? You can wait in the stalls, she says, when I have laid the opera glasses and the program before her and arranged her footstool comfortably. I support myself against the wall, hardly able to stand. My jealousy and anger are so great. No, anger is not the right word. It is mortal anguish. I can see her in her blue moire dress, her ermine cloak laid over her bare shoulders. Their boxes are face to face. I can see them devouring each other with their eyes. What do they care for Goldini's Pamela, Salvini, Marini, the audience? For them the world has disappeared. As for me, what am I at this moment? Today she is attending the Greek ambassador's ball. Does she know whom she will meet there? At any rate, she is dressed for the occasion. A heavy silk dress molds her heavenly figure and reveals her arms and breasts. Her hair, which is tied in a large fiery knot, is adorned with a water lily and a spray of green rushes that sweeps down onto the nape of her neck. She no longer shows any trace of excitement. The fever and agitation have vanished, and she is calm, so calm that my blood freezes, and I feel my heart grow cold under her gaze. With slow stateliness, she climbs the marble stairs, slips off her precious coat, and carelessly drifts into the room, filled with the silvery smoke of 1,000 candles. For a moment, I follow her with my eyes, dumbfounded, and then I notice that I am holding her furs in my hands, still warm from the heat of her body. I deposit a kiss on them, and my eyes fill with tears. Here he is, in his black velvet jacket sumptuously lined with dark fur. He is a proud, handsome despot who plays with the lives and souls of men. He stands in the doorway, looking about him proudly. He catches sight of me and gives me a piercing stare. Under his icy gaze, I am again seized with a deadly terror, a premonition that this man will capture and enslave her, that he has the power to subjugate her entirely. Confronted with such fierce virility, I feel ashamed and envious. I am no more than a feeble, confused being. My weakest point is that I want to hate him, but cannot. Why did he notice me among the army of servants? With an aristocratic gesture, he signals to me to come to him. Help me off with my coat, he orders calmly. My whole body trembles with rebellion, but I obey humbly, like a slave. I wait all night long in the antechamber, in a state of feverish delirium. Strange visions pass before my eyes. I see their meeting, their first lingering exchange of glances. I see her twirling through the ballroom in his arms, giddy, resting with half-closed eyes against his breast. I see him in all the sanctity of love, not as a slave but as a lord, lying on the ottoman with her at his feet. I see myself kneeling before him, waiting on him, the tea tray trembling in my hands. I see him reach for the whip. The footmen are talking about him now. Like a woman, he knows he is beautiful and behaves accordingly. Always elegant, he changes his costume 4 or even 5 times a day like a courtesan. He has been seen in Paris dressed as a woman, and men showered him with love letters. An Italian singer famous for his talent and for his passionate temperament forced his way into his house and threatened to kill himself if our hero did not yield to him. I regret, the Greek replied with a smile. I should have granted you my favors with pleasure, but alas, I can only sign your death warrant, for I am a man. The ballroom is nearly empty, but she has apparently no thought of leaving. Dawn is already peeping through the blinds. Finally, I hear the rustle of the heavy dress that flows behind her like a green wave. She is drawing slowly near, chatting to him. I hardly exist for her. She does not even bother to give me orders. "Madame's coat," he commands. Naturally, he does not think of assisting her himself. While I help her with her furs, he stands by with folded arms. As I kneel to put on her fur boots, she leans lightly on his shoulder and asks, "How does the story go about the lioness?" "When the lion she has chosen to live with is attacked by another," says the Greek, "the lioness lies down and watches the fight. If her companion is losing, she does not come to his rescue, but looks on indifferently while he is mauled to death by his opponent. Then she follows the victor, the stronger. That is woman's nature." At that point, my lioness gives me a strange look that makes me shudder, and the red light of dawn bathes all three of us in blood. She did not go to bed, but took off her ball dress and untied her hair. Then she ordered me to light a fire, and she sat by the hearth staring into the flames. "Do you still need me, mistress?" I asked in a faltering voice. Wanda shook her head. I left the room, walked through the gallery, and sat down on the steps that led to the garden. A gentle north wind blew a cool dampness from the Arno. The green hills lay under a rosy mist, and golden vapors shrouded the town and billowed over the dome of the cathedral. A few stars glimmered in the pale sky. I tore off my coat and pressed my burning forehead against the marble. Everything that had happened so far seemed like a child's game. Now things were serious, horribly serious. I felt the approach of a catastrophe. I could see it before me and almost touch it with my hand, but I did not have the courage to go toward it and meet it. I was a broken man. To be honest, it was not the suffering or the thought of being maltreated that frightened me. I was possessed by one fear only, that of losing the one I loved so passionately, and the fear was so violent and harrowing that I began to sob like a child. She remained in her room all day, waited on by the negress. When the evening star rose in the sky, I caught sight of her crossing the garden, and followed her stealthily. I saw her enter the temple of Venus. I crept up behind her and watched through a crack in the door. She stood before the majestic statue, her hands joined in prayer, and the light of the star of love cast a blue ray upon her. That night on my couch, I was seized with the terror of losing her, and was so overwhelmed by feelings of doubt that I decided to play the part of a libertine hero. I lit the red oil lamp that hung in the passage under a pious image, and crept into her bedroom, shielding the light with my hand. The vanquished lioness was the picture of exhaustion. She lay asleep on her back, sprawled over the cushions, her fists clenched, her breathing heavy. She seemed in the midst of an alarming dream. I slowly took my hand away from the light and let it fall on her magnificent face, but she did not awake. I gently placed the lamp on the floor and fell on my knees by Wanda's bed, resting my hand on her warm, soft arm. She stirred but did not wake. I do not know how long I stayed in this prostrate position, in the dead of night, gripped by dreadful torment. At last, a fit of violent trembling came over me, and I was able to weep. I flooded her arm with my tears. She started several times, then finally awoke, rubbed her eyes, and looked at me. "Severin!" she cried, more frightened than angry. I could not reply. "Severin," she said again gently, "what is wrong? Are you sick?" Her voice was so compassionate, so kind and tender, that it was like a red-hot iron piercing my breast, and I began to sob aloud. "Severin, my poor friend, my unhappy friend," she gently stroked my hair. "I am very sorry for you, but I cannot help you. With the best will in the world, I can think of no remedy for you." "Oh, Wanda, must it be so?" I moaned in my grief. "What, Severin? What do you mean? Do you no longer love me at all? Have you not a little pity left for me, or has the handsome stranger taken it all from you?" "I cannot lie," she answered gently after a moment's silence. "He has made an impression on me that I cannot yet understand. I live in pain and fear. I have seen this feeling described in poetry and on the stage, but I had taken it for a figment of the imagination. Oh, he is a lion of a man, strong, handsome, proud, yet sensitive. not coarse like the men of our northern countries. I pity you, believe me, Severin, but I must possess him. What am I saying? I must give myself to him, if he will have me. Think of your honor, Wanda. You have kept it unsullied till now, I exclaimed, even if I no longer mean anything to you. I am considering it, she replied. I want to be strong for as long as I can, but I want. She hid her face shyly in the cushions. I want to be his wife, if he will have me. Wanda, I gasped, seized by the fatal anguish that made me lose all control. You want to be his wife. You want to belong to him forever. Oh, do not send me away from you. He does not love you. Who told you that? She cried. He does not love you, I went on passionately, but I do. I love you. I adore you. I am your slave. I want you to tread me underfoot. I want to carry you in my arms all my life. Who told you that he does not love me? She asked again, interrupting me violently. Oh, be mine, I pleaded. I cannot live. I cannot exist without you. Have pity, Wanda, have pity. She gazed at me with her cold, insensitive look and smiled wickedly. You say he does not love me, she said. Very well then, let that idea comfort you. And she turned her back on me with a disdainful air. Good God, I sobbed. Are you not a woman of flesh and blood? Have you not a heart like mine? You know what I am, she answered harshly. I am a woman of stone, Venus in furs, your ideal. Kneel down and worship me. Wanda, I pleaded, have mercy. She laughed. I buried my face in the cushions and let the tears flow to relieve my pain. For a long while all was silent. Then Wanda slowly rose. You bore me, she said. Wanda, I am weary. Let me sleep. Have pity on me, I pleaded. Do not reject me. No man can love you as I do. Let me sleep. She turned her back on me again. I leapt to my feet and seized the dagger that hung next to her bed. I drew it from its scabbard and pointed it at my breast. I shall kill myself before your eyes, I sobbed. Do as you please, replied Wanda with perfect indifference, but let me sleep. She yawned loudly. I am tired. For a moment I was stunned. Then I began to laugh and cry at the same time. Finally I stuck the dagger in my belt and again fell on my knees before her. Wanda, listen to me one moment, I pleaded. I want to sleep, do you hear? She cried, leaping angrily out of bed and giving me a kick. Are you forgetting that I am your mistress? As I did not move an inch, she seized the whip and dealt me a blow. I rose. She struck me again, this time full in the face. Animal, slave. With my clenched fist raised to the sky, I resolutely left the room. She flung down the whip and burst into a loud peal of laughter. I imagine my theatrical attitude must have seemed the height of comedy. I am now resolved to cut myself off from the heartless woman who has treated me so cruelly and is now prepared to betray me in reward for my servile adoration and all that I have suffered. I tie the little I possess into a bundle and write her the following note. Madame, I have loved you like a madman. I have given myself to you as no man has ever done, but you have abused my sacred emotions and have played a frivolous and shameless game with me. So long as you were only pitiless and cruel, I was able still to love you, but now you are becoming vulgar. I am no longer the slave who let you trample and whip him. You yourself have given me back my freedom, and I am leaving a woman that I can now only hate and despise. Severin Kuzemski. I entrust this note to the black servant girl and escape as fast as I can. I arrive breathless at the railway station. Suddenly a pain shoots through my heart and I begin to weep. Oh, how shameful this is. I want to run away, but I cannot. I turn back, but whither? To her, the one I abominate and adore. Again I change my mind. I cannot return. I have no right to return. But how can I leave Florence? I realize that I have no money, not a penny. Then I shall travel on foot. It is better to be an honest beggar than to eat the bread of a courtesan. But I cannot leave. She has my word of honor. I must return. Perhaps she will free me from my pledge. I take a few steps, then stop once more. She has my word, yes, and I have sworn to be her slave for as long as she wishes, until she sets me free. However, I do have the right to kill myself. I walk through the Cascine and down to the Arno, where the yellow waves lap monotonously around the trunks of a few lonely willows. I sit down and draw up an account of my existence. I review the whole of my life and find it a sorry affair. A few joys, an infinite amount of boredom and futility, and in the middle, a well of grief, anguish, disappointment, and vain hopes. I think of my mother, whom I loved so dearly, and whom I saw die of a dreadful illness, of my brother who perished in the flower of his youth, without ever tasting the pleasures of life. I think of my dead nurse, of my childhood playmates, of the friends who studied with me, of all those who are lying under the cold earth. I think of the turtle dove who used to come cooing and bowing to me instead of going to his mate. All is dust and returns to dust. I burst out laughing and slide into the river, but at the same time I save myself by clutching a willow branch overhanging the muddy waters. As in a vision, the woman who has made me so wretched appears before me. She hovers above the water, the sun shines through her transparent form, and her head is surrounded by red flames. She turns toward me and smiles. Here I am back again, soaked to the skin and burning with shame and fever. The servant girl has delivered my letter. I am condemned, lost, delivered into the hands of a heartless woman whom I have now insulted. She may even kill me. Well, let her do so. For although I do not want to live any longer, I am unable to take my own life. I walk to the back of the house and see her on the terrace, leaning over the railing with her head in full sunlight and her green eyes gleaming. "Are you still alive?" she asks, without moving. I remain silent and hang my head. "Give me back my dagger," she says. "It is of no use to you, since you have not even the courage to kill yourself." "I have lost it," I reply, shivering with cold. She eyes me scornfully. "Did you lose it in the Arno?" she shrugged. "Ah, well, why didn't you leave?" I murmur something which neither she nor I can understand. "Oh, you have no money," she exclaims. "Here." And she tosses me her purse with a contemptuous gesture. I leave it on the ground. For a long time we are both silent. "So you do not want to go?" "I cannot." Wanda goes to the Cascine and to the theater without me. When she entertains, the negresses wait on her. No one inquires about me. I roam anxiously in the garden like an animal that has lost its master. As I was laying in the copse today, watching a few sparrows fight for a handful of seed, I suddenly heard the rustle of a woman's dress. Wanda drew near, wearing a dark silk gown modestly fastened at the neck. The Greek was with her. An agitated exchange took place, but I could not catch a word. Then I saw him stamp his foot, sending the gravel flying, and lash the air with his riding crop. Wanda started. Was she afraid he would strike her? He left. She called him back, but he did not hear, or rather did not want to hear. Wanda shook her head sadly and sat down on the nearest stone bench. For a long time she remained deep in thought. I watched her with wicked glee. Finally I regained possession of myself and came toward her with an ironic look. She stood up, her whole body trembling. "I only come to wish you great happiness," I said, bowing to her. "I see, madame, that you have found your master." "Yes, thank God," she cried. "Not another slave. I have had enough of them. A master. Women need to have a master to worship." "So you worship him, Wanda?" I exclaimed. "You worship that barbarian?" "I love him as I have never loved before, Wanda." I clenched my fists, but the tears were already rising to my eyes, and I was overcome by the delirium of passion. "Very well then, choose him. Take him for your husband. Let him become your master, but I want to remain your slave for as long as I live." "You want to be my slave even then?" "That would be amusing, but I am afraid he would not accept it." "He would not?" "He is already jealous of you," she exclaimed. "Yes, he of you. He insists that I dismiss you on the spot, and when I told him who you were—" "You told him?" I gasped. "I told him everything. I related all our story to him, all our oddities, everything, and instead of laughing, he grew angry and stamped his foot and threatened to beat you. Wanda lowered her eyes and was silent. Yes, yes, I said with bitter irony. You are afraid of him. I threw myself at her feet and in my exaltation embraced her knees. I want nothing from you, nothing but the permission to be near you always, to be your slave. Do you realize that you bore me? Said Wanda in a neutral voice. I leapt to my feet, my blood was boiling. You are not cruel now, you are vulgar, I said, giving the word its precise, wounding meaning. That is already in your letter, replied Wanda with a shrug. A man of wit does not repeat himself. Then how would you describe your behavior toward me? I asked furiously. I could make you see sense, she replied mockingly, but I prefer this time to answer you by argument rather than with the whip. You have no right to blame me. I have always been honest with you. Have I not warned you more than once? Have I not loved you with all my heart, passionately, and have I in any way hidden from you the danger of lowering yourself before me? Have I not told you that I want to be dominated? But you wish to be my plaything, my slave. Your greatest delight was to be kicked and whipped by a proud and cruel woman. What do you want now? Dangerous tendencies were lurking in me, and you were the one who awakened them. If I now take pleasure in hurting and tormenting you, it is entirely your fault. You have made me what I am, and you are so weak and unmanly that you are now blaming me. Yes, I am guilty, I replied, but have I not suffered enough now? Cease this cruel game. That is exactly my intention, she replied with a strange look. Wanda, I cried, do not drive me to desperation. You can see that I have become a man again. A flash in the pan, she replied. It disappears as quickly as it flares up. You think you can intimidate me, but you are only making yourself ridiculous. If you had been the man I thought you were at first, a serious-minded and intelligent man, I should have loved you faithfully and become your wife. Women desire men they can look up to. A man such as you, who willfully places his neck under a woman's foot, is only an amusing toy that she throws away when she is bored. Try to throw me away, I said ironically. Some toys are dangerous. Do not provoke me, cried Wanda. Her eyes began to sparkle, her cheeks to flame. If I cannot possess you, I said in a voice strangled with anger, then no other man shall. What play is that from? She mocked. Then she seized me by the coat. Do not provoke me, she repeated. I am not a cruel woman, but who knows how far I might go, or whether there is any limit to what I might do to you. What can you do to me that would be worse for me than to take him for your lover, I said, hardly able to contain myself. I could make you his slave, she replied. Are you not in my power? Do I not have the contract? But naturally, it would merely be a pleasure for you if I were to have you bound and were to tell him, now do with him as you please. Woman, are you mad? I am perfectly rational. I am warning you for the last time. Do not offer me any resistance. I have gone so far now that it is easy for me to go still further. I now feel something akin to hatred for you. To see you whipped by him would be a veritable pleasure, but I am still restraining myself at present. At my wit's end, I seized her by the wrist and forced her to kneel before me. Severin! She cried, her features twisted in fear and rage. I shall kill you if you become his wife. The voice that came out of my throat was toneless and hoarse. You are mine, and I shall not let you go. I love you too much. I clutched her tightly and unthinkingly grasped the dagger that was still in my belt. Wanda looked up at me with her gentle, unfathomable eyes. This is the way I like you, she said calmly. Right now you are a man, and I know that I still love you. Wanda. Tears of delight sprang to my eyes. I leaned down and covered her adorable face with kisses. But she suddenly broke into gay laughter and cried, Have you had enough of your ideal now? Are you pleased with me? What? Were you not serious? I am serious, she replied in a playful tone, when I say that I love you and you alone. But you sweet madman, you simpleton, did you not even notice that it was all a game, a joke? Did you not see how hard it was for me to whip you, when all I wanted to do was to take your face in my hands and cover it with kisses? But that is enough now. I have played my cruel role better than you expected. Now I am sure that you will be content with a nice little wife, clever and not too ugly. We shall live very sensibly and—" "You will be my wife!" I could not help exclaiming, overjoyed. "Yes, your wife, my dear darling husband," whispered Wanda, kissing my hand. I threw my arms around her. "Now you are no longer my slave, Gregor. You are my dear Severin again, my husband." "And what about him? Do you not love him?" "How could you think I could ever love that barbarian? You were blind. I was so afraid for you." "I nearly took my life because of you." "Truly," she exclaimed. I shudder to think that you were already in the Arno." "But it was you who saved me," I said tenderly. "You were hovering above the waters, smiling, and your smile called me back to life." A new calmness has come over me now that I hold her in my arms. She rests peacefully against my breast. She lets me kiss her and smiles. It is as though I were emerging from a fever beset by fantastic visions, as though I were a shipwrecked sailor safely washed up ashore after a long and perilous battle against the waves. "I hate this town where you have been so unhappy," she said, as I wished her good night. "I want to leave immediately, tomorrow. Be so good as to write a few letters for me, and in the meantime I will pay my farewell calls. Does that suit you?" "Of course, my dear, sweet, beautiful wife." Early next morning she knocked at my door and asked me tenderly how I had slept. I would never have thought that gentleness could become her so. She has now been gone for over 4 hours. I have long since finished the letters and am sitting on the balcony, watching for her carriage to appear. I am a little worried about her, although, goodness knows, there is not the slightest cause for doubt or alarm. But the feeling is there, weighing on my chest, and I cannot rid myself of it. No doubt my soul is still darkened by the sufferings of the past days. She is back, radiating happiness and satisfaction. "Well, did everything go as you wished?" I ask, kissing her hand tenderly. "Yes, dear heart," she replies, "and we are leaving tonight. Help me pack my cases." During the evening, she asked me to go to the post office and mail her letters myself. I took the carriage and returned within an hour. "The mistress wants to see you," said the black girl with a smile, as I climbed the wide marble stairs. "Has someone called?" "No one," she replied, crouching on the stairs like a black cat. Slowly I passed through the hall and found myself before her bedroom door. Why was my heart beating so? I was perfectly happy. Slowly I opened the door and drew back the curtain. Wanda was lying on the ottoman and did not seem to notice me. How lovely she looked in her silver-gray silk dress that molded her figure and revealed her arms and her incomparable breasts. Her hair was tied with a black velvet ribbon. A great fire crackled in the hearth, the lamp cast a red glow, and the whole room seemed bathed in blood. "Wanda!" I cried at last. "Oh, Severin," she said, leaping up and embracing me. "I have missed you so." She sat down again among the sumptuous cushions and tried to draw me to her, but I fell on my knees and gently rested my head in her lap. "Do you know, I am very much in love with you today," she murmured, stroking a lock of hair from my forehead and kissing my eyes. "What beautiful eyes you have. They have always been the most attractive part of you, but today they quite enrapture me. I am overwhelmed." She stretched her marvelous limbs and gazed tenderly at me through her red eyelashes. "But you are so cold. You are holding me as though I were a block of wood. Wait a moment. I shall make you amorous." She pressed her lips languorously against mine. "I am no longer attractive to you. You still want me to treat you cruelly. No doubt I have been too kind today. Do you know what, my little fool? I think I shall whip you." "But my child—" "I want to. Wanda." "Come, let me tie you up," she went on, skipping gleefully across the room. "I want to see you very much in love. Do you understand? Here are the ropes. I wonder if I shall still be able to do it." She began to tie my feet together, Then she fastened my hands securely behind my back, and finally she wound a rope around me like a prisoner. "There," she said with playful eagerness. "Can you move?" "No." "Good." She tied a loop in the stout rope, threw it over my head, and let it fall to my hips, then drew it tight and secured me to the pillar. A strange shudder went through me. "I feel like a condemned man," I murmured. "That is because you are to be thoroughly whipped today," she said. "Then wear your fur jacket, I beg of you." "I shall grant you that pleasure." She fetched her kazabeka and put it on with a smile. Then she stood before me with her arms crossed and looked at me with half-closed eyes. "Do you know the story of the ox of Dionysius?" she asked. "I remember it vaguely. Why?" "A courtier invented a new instrument of torture for the tyrant of Syracuse. The victim was to be put inside a hollow bronze ox under which a fire was to be lit. It was intended that as the metal grew hot, the prisoner would howl with pain and thus imitate the bellowing of an ox. Dionysius expressed interest in the invention and decided to try it out on the spot, so he had the inventor himself placed inside the ox. A very instructive story. It is you who have taught me selfishness, pride, and cruelty, and you shall be my first victim. I am now feeling intense pleasure in having at my mercy someone who, like me, has thoughts, feelings, and desires, a man who is my superior, both physically and intellectually, and above all, a man who loves me, for do you still love me?" "I love you madly." "Good. You will get all the more pleasure from what I am about to do to you." "What has come over you? I do not understand you today. There is an unmistakable glint of cruelty in your eyes, and you are so strangely beautiful, quite the Venus in furs." Without answering, Wanda put her arm about my neck and kissed me. My passion flooded back in all its violence. "Where is the whip?" I asked. Wanda laughed and moved back a step or two. "So do you really want to be whipped?" she said, throwing back her head with a proud gesture. "Yes." Suddenly Wanda's face altered. It was transfigured by anger and seemed for a moment quite hideous. "Then whip him!" she cried. At that instant, the dark, curly head of the Greek appeared behind the curtains of the four-poster bed. I was speechless and paralyzed. My situation was dreadfully comic, and I should have laughed at it myself had it not been so desperately humiliating. It surpassed anything I had imagined. My rival stepped forth in his boots, his tight white breeches, and his close-fitting jacket. The sight of his athletic build sent a shudder down my spine. "You are indeed cruel," he said, turning to Wanda. "Only thirsty for pleasure," she replied fiercely. "Pleasure alone makes life worthwhile. Whoever suffers or lives in privation greets death as a friend, but whoever surrenders to pleasure does not easily part with life. The pleasure-seeker must take life joyfully, in the manner of the ancients. He should not be afraid of indulging himself at the expense of others. He must never feel pity. He must harness others to his carriage or his plow, like beasts. He should choose his slaves among men who live fully and would enjoy the life as he does, and he must use them for his own pleasure, without any trace of remorse. It is not for him to ask whether they are fulfilled or mortified. He must always bear this idea in mind: if they had me in their power, they would act as I do, and I should have to pay for their pleasure with my sweat, my blood, and my soul. This is how the ancients lived. Pleasure and cruelty, freedom and slavery, always went hand in hand. Men who wish to live as the gods of Olympus did must have slaves to throw into their fish ponds and gladiators ready to do battle for them at their feasts. Little do they care if they are spattered by the fighter's blood." Wanda's words brought me back to my senses. "Untie me!" I cried. "Are you not my slave? My property," said Wanda. "Must I show you the contract?" "Untie me," I threatened, "or else—" I strained against the ropes. "Can he free himself?" she asked. "He has threatened to kill me." "Have no fear," said the Greek, inspecting my bonds. "I shall call for help," I said. "No one will hear you, and no one will prevent me from abusing your sacred emotions and playing this frivolous game with you," replied Wanda, parodying the phrase from my letter with fierce humor. "Now do you find me cruel and merciless, or am I merely being vulgar? What do you say? Do you love me still, or do you hate and despise me? Here is the whip. She handed it to the Greek, who eagerly stepped forward. Do not touch me, I said, trembling with rage. I shall not take anything from you. You object because I am not wearing furs, teased the Greek, and he took his short sable jacket from the bed. How charming you look, exclaimed Wanda, giving him a kiss and helping him on with his furs. May I really whip him? He asked. Do with him as you please, replied Wanda. Beast, I cried, utterly revolted. The Greek eyed me fiercely, like a tiger. His muscles swelled as he drew back his arm, and the whip whistled through the air. Like Marsyas, I was bound hand and foot and condemned to be flayed by Apollo. My eyes drifted about the room and came to rest on the ceiling where Samson lay at Delilah's feet, about to be blinded by the Philistines. The painting suddenly appeared as a symbol, the timeless image of the love, the passion, and the lust of man for woman. Each of us ends up like Samson, I thought. We are always betrayed by the woman we love, whether she wears a sable cloak or a linen smock. Now watch me train him, cried the Greek. He bared his teeth, and his face wore the bloodthirsty expression that so frightened me the first time I saw him. And he began to whip me so mercilessly and with such dreadful force that I started at each blow and began to shake all over with pain. The tears streamed down my cheeks. Meanwhile, Wanda lay on the ottoman, her head in her hand, watching the scene with fiendish curiosity and amusement. The sensation of being whipped before the eyes of a woman one adores by a successful rival is quite indescribable. I was dying of shame and despair. What was most humiliating was that I felt a wild and supersensual pleasure in my pitiful situation, lashed by Apollo's whip and mocked by the cruel laughter of my Venus. But Apollo whipped all poetry from me, as one blow followed the next, until finally, clenching my teeth in impotent rage, I cursed myself, my voluptuous imagination, and above all woman and love. I suddenly saw, with alarming clarity, how blind passion and lust have always led men, from the time of Holofernes and Agamemnon, into the net of women's treachery, into poverty, slavery, and death. It was as though I were awakening from a long dream. My blood was flowing under the whip. I curled up like a worm being crushed, but still he continued to whip me without mercy, and she to laugh, and all the while to fasten her cases and slip into her traveling furs. She was still laughing as they went downstairs arm in arm and got into the carriage. A moment's silence. I held my breath. The doors slammed, the horses moved off, and the noise of the carriage could be heard for a while. Then all was quiet. For a moment I thought of revenge. I thought of killing him, but I was bound by the wretched contract. I could do nothing but keep my word and grit my teeth. The first thing I felt after this, the most cruel disaster of my life, was the desire to live rough and experience danger and privation. I wanted to become a soldier and go to Asia or Algeria, but my father was old and sick and wanted me to stay near him. So I simply returned home and for 2 years shared his worries, administered our estate, and also learned something which was quite new to me and which now refreshed me like a draught of clear water, to work and to fulfill my duties. Then my father died, and quite naturally and without altering my way of life, I became the master of the house. I donned my father's boots of Spanish leather and continued to lead a well-ordered life, as though he were still standing behind me, watching over my shoulder with his great wise eyes. One day I received a box accompanied by a letter. I recognized Wanda's writing. Strangely moved, I opened it and read, Sir, now that 3 years have elapsed since that night in Florence, I can admit that I loved you deeply. But it was you who stifled my feelings with your romantic devotion and insane passion. From the moment that you became my slave, I felt that it would be impossible for you ever to be my husband. But I found it exciting to realize your ideal, and while I amused myself pleasantly, perhaps to cure you. I found the strong man I needed and was as happy with him as it is possible to be on this funny ball of clay. But my happiness, like all things of this world, was short-lived. About a year ago, he was killed in a duel, and since then I have been living in Paris like an Aspasia. What about you? Your life will surely not lack sunshine if your imagination has ceased to govern you, and those other qualities that first attracted me to you have gained the upper hand. I mean your clarity of thought, kindness of heart, and above all, virtuous austerity. I hope that my whip has cured you, that the treatment, cruel though it was, has proved effective. In memory of that time and of a woman who loved you passionately, I am sending you the portrait by the poor German painter, Venus in Furs. I could not help smiling, and, as I sank into a daydream, I suddenly saw before me the lovely creature clad in her ermine jacket, with the whip in her hand. I smiled to think of the woman I had loved so much, of the jacket that had so delighted me in the past. I smiled at the thought of the whip, and finally I smiled to think of my own suffering, and said to myself, the treatment was cruel but radical, and the main thing is that I am cured. And what is the moral of the tale? I asked, replacing the manuscript on the table. That I was a fool, he exclaimed, without turning around, as though embarrassed. If only I had whipped her instead. A curious method, I replied. Perhaps with your peasant girls. Oh, they are used to it. But think of the effect it would produce on our refined ladies with their nerves and hysterics. But what about the moral? The moral is that woman, as nature created her and as man up to now has found her attractive, is man's enemy. She can be his slave or his mistress, but never his companion. This she can only be when she has the same rights as he and is his equal in education and work. For the time being, there is only one alternative, to be the hammer or the anvil. I was fool enough to let a woman make a slave of me, do you understand? Hence the moral of the tale. Whoever allows himself to be whipped deserves to be whipped. But as you see, I have taken the blows well. The rosy mist of supersensuality has lifted, and no one will ever make me believe that the sacred wenches of Benares or Plato's rooster are the images of God.